The King of Fists, a title given to the man who subdued the entire martial world using only his own fists, was more widely known by that name than by his real one. That man was Dan Wusung, and at that moment he was gravely injured. He had been ambushed by a mysterious group of assassins. Even while wounded, he managed to kill almost all of them. Only 2 remained. Watching him from the top of a valley, he admitted that the 2 seemed extremely skilled and even wondered where they came from. But at that moment, it no longer mattered. The King of Fists kicked another enemy who was on the verge of death. When the man begged for help from the so-called sword demon, he was split in half without hesitation. Dan Wusung realized that the man had cut down his own ally without a second thought, which showed he fought dirty. The symbol on the sword and that cruelty made him recognize them. They were from the demonic faction. The sword demon said he was impressed, stating that he had held out for a long time. Dan Wusung told him to be quiet and declared that he would defeat him in just 10 strikes. The demon replied that it was arrogance and said he wanted to test whether the King of Fists' reputation was truly deserved. The demonic blade attacks were dodged by Dan Wusung, who quickly closed the distance and landed a powerful punch on the sword demon's stomach. That was the first strike. Then he unleashed a violent barrage of punches, landing 9 hits in total. Even so, something felt strange. His attacks were not hitting the enemy's vital points as they should. That was when he realized someone was restricting his movements. The other enemy, who remained above, had tied nearly invisible threads around Dan Wusung's arms and fists. Distracted and with his guard lowered, he ended up taking a direct blow to the chest. The demon's sword pierced through his heart. The demon declared that it was the end of the King of Fists' reign. Even so, even with his heart pierced, Dan Wusung gathered his strength for one last attack. The sword demon would not be able to defend against that strike. With his fist wrapped in lightning, he launched an attack that caused a massive explosion, opening a terrifying crater in the ground. However, the sword demon came out with only a small scratch on his face. He admitted that Dan Wusung was truly strong, saying that if the blow had landed directly, he would have been pulverized. The other demon commented that the attack really could have been dangerous. Then the sword demon mocked the King of Fists, saying that if he was going to die, he should at least say something. Even on the brink of death, Dan Wusung used the rest of his strength to land a punch on the sword demon's chin, making him bite his own tongue. He then declared that it was the 10th strike. As the enemy spat blood, Dan Wusung felt his strength leave his body. That was the end of his life as the King of Fists. He still wished he could land one more strike, just one more time. Thus, Dan Wusung, the King of Fists, died at the hands of the demonic faction. Meanwhile, on Mount Juhua, a man was rising with the help of his maid. He was very sick and wondered if someone had cured him. As he examined himself, he realized there was not a single wound on his body. The woman asked if the young master would like some water. He accepted, but found it strange to be addressed that way. As he took a sip of water, he saw a mirror and realized that his appearance was terrible. He immediately spat out the water and began wondering who had placed a mask on his face, but found no seams. That was not a mask or clothing. The servant left to call the doctor, and while hearing the young master slapping himself inside the room, thought he had completely lost his mind. The King of Fists reflected that this could not be the work of the demonic faction, because if they had that kind of power, they would have already dominated the martial world. Then he began to wonder who had done this to him. As he tried to walk toward a desk where there was a book, he realized the extreme difficulty in moving. His body trembled entirely and felt far too weak, like that of a newborn deer. He concluded that this body was useless. The book on the table was from the Yuna Merchant Group, a massive commercial organization located on Mount Juhua, a name he had heard before. As he read the letters on the table, he discovered that the body he now inhabited belonged to the eldest son of the merchant family, Lee Jin Aeon. The letters spoke only of money, gambling, and women. From what he could understand, that man was a complete loser. He realized that it was neither sorcery nor a disguise. He also did not feel any strange energy within his body. The only possible explanation was that he had been reincarnated into that young man's body. He had heard stories about it before, but had never truly believed them. At that moment, someone called again for the first young master. The one who entered the room, looking very worried, was the physician Guang Sun Myung, asking if he was alright. Now in Lee Jin Aeon's body, the former Dan Wusung observed the doctor without recognizing him. The physician explained that he had been told something was wrong, and that he was very concerned. Lee Jin Aeon, still trying to understand his new reality, said there was no need for such a commotion. The physician then commented that he had already prepared the usual meal, a chicken soup to restore the young master's weakened body. But now in Lee Jin Aeon's body, the former Dan Wusung realized that bastard was lying. That was not a simple chicken soup, but the so-called dragon and phoenix soup. For a healthy person, it might even be excellent, but for someone already ill, it was practically poison, because the body could not withstand such intense medicinal energy. He also noticed that the physician had tried to check his pulse earlier, probably finding it strange that the first young master suddenly seemed too healthy. It became clear to him that the physician was a snake. The physician continued, saying that if he consumed it regularly, he would become extremely healthy, as strong as young people who practiced martial arts, and that he might even be able to compete in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Lee Jin Aeon took the opportunity to ask which edition edition they were on. The physician replied that he was not sure, but it should be around the 200th. The young master said he understood, stated that he was not hungry at the moment, and asked him to leave the soup there and withdraw, saying he would rest. Once he was alone and had closed the door, he reflected that if they were at the 200th Dragon and Phoenix competition, then not much time had passed since his death. That meant the damned members of the demonic faction were likely still alive, and besides them, there was that treacherous physician by his side. He was surrounded by people who deserved a beating, but he thought they did not need to worry, because he would soon deal with all of them. Later, the maids prepared a large breakfast, and commented in surprise that he was eating so much, since before he had only consumed porridge. One of the servants said he had a strong appetite lately, and that he would soon return from his daily walk as well. When Lee Jin-yeon came back, following his new exercise routine, he remarked that the breakfast looked great, and ordered them to keep preparing everything like that from now on. As they left, they whispered that he really seemed much healthier. Before he could even begin eating, the physician Guung Sun Myung appeared again to bother him. As he passed by the maids, he bumped into them on purpose, showing arrogance. Now fully embracing his dominant demeanor, Lee Jin-yeon found that rude and ridiculous. The physician, on the other hand, opened a wide smile upon seeing him, and showed exaggerated happiness. Lee Jin-yeon decided it was the perfect moment to set a trap for that rat. He asked the reason for the visit. The physician replied that he had not heard anything about him, and could not bear the worry, so he came to see him. He also commented that the young master's appearance looked very different, and that all the effort he had made now seemed meaningless. The young master asked what effort he was talking about, whether it was the attempt to seduce him with the dragon and phoenix soup. The physician feigned surprise, saying there must be a misunderstanding, as that soup was merely a nourishing tonic. Lee Jin-yeon stated that to him it looked like poison. The physician insisted that it was impossible, and said that if he was not welcome, he would take his leave. But the young master reprimanded him, asking if he had come without being summoned, and now intended to leave without permission, and questioned who the real master was there. The physician bowed again. Then Lee Jin-yeon said he was just joking, and stated that he needed to send a letter. He asked for writing materials, explaining that he would dictate the content, and the physician would write it. The physician replied that he already had writing tools with him, and was ready. The young master began to dictate, saying that due to the severe illness of Lord Lee Jin-yeon, he would remain at the country estate for some time, and that since his life was stubbornly long, he requested advice on what he should do next. When the physician stopped writing, he asked if something was wrong. The physician questioned what he meant. Suddenly, Lee Jin-yeon threw a hachi that crossed the room and embedded itself into the wall behind, grazing the physician's neck. He told the old man to pay attention to what was being said. The physician pretended not to understand. Then the young master calmly explained about the dragon and phoenix soup, reinforcing that for healthy people it could be excellent, but for the sick it was poison, something a physician would certainly know. He also questioned whether he truly thought the pulse check and the suspicion about his sudden health had gone unnoticed. More importantly, those medicines and tonics clearly revealed his intentions, and he was not even hiding the desire to kill him. It was also evident that he was not acting alone. He ordered him to immediately write down the name of whoever had sent him to do that. The physician asked why this was happening all of a sudden, and tried to act like a gentle and respectable man. However, he ended up revealing that even a scoundrel like him still had some conscience. While calmly chewing his food, Lee Jin-yeon remarked that he was finally showing his true face. Guung Sun Myung admitted that he had been trying to let him die with dignity, and thought that now there was no other choice. He would have to kill him, and silence the other servants. He pulled out a needle hidden in his clothes, but before he could act, Lee Jin-yeon struck him hard on the head. The fake physician fell face first onto the table. The young master scolded him, telling him not to lose focus while he was speaking. However, upon feeling pain in his own hand from that simple strike, he realized how pitiful that weak body was. He concluded that he needed to recover his strength as quickly as possible. He thought that once he fully recovered his strength, it would not matter even if the mind behind everything was the merchant group itself. When the time came, he would investigate Guung Sun Myung thoroughly and find out who had given the order. But suddenly, a violent headache took over him. At that very moment, all the memories of Lee Jin-yeon's body flooded into his mind at once. A tear ran down his face as he finally understood everything that was happening. Lee Jin-yeon was the eldest son of the wealthy Yuna merchant group. He was not as intelligent as his second brother, nor as strong as the third. In the eyes of the family, he was just a defective son. He tried to compensate for that with money, but ended up sinking into pleasures and vices. When he realized his mistakes and tried to change, it was already too late. He had neglected his health and was sent to that country estate, practically in exile. From the memories, it was clear that the main clan did not care about that place at all. At first, the biggest problem had been reincarnating without the original owner's memories. Now, with everything in mind, he could finally focus on martial arts without distractions. And to think that Kid had wasted a naturally talented body. With the knowledge from his past life, he could rebuild everything, although it would take time. Then he realized something even better. He had a lot of money. He could buy countless elixirs. His true power in this new life was not just talent, but also wealth. After some time, he noticed that the physician had still not woken up. Guung Sun Myung's body remained collapsed over the table. He was was dead. 1 year passed. The seasons changed one after another. During that period, Lee Jin-eon managed to manifest his energy core and engraved in his body the martial arts necessary for survival. He named them Enlightened Mobility, Enlightened Body, and Quick Step. In addition, he resumed his main technique from his past life, the art of the 10 phases of white lightning, the ability that allowed him to control lightning. In just 1 year, he had already reached the 4th phase. For such a short time, his progress was impressive. One day, he rose from meditation and delivered a kick that split a leaf in half. Even so, he concluded that it was still not enough. At that moment, one of the guards from the Yuna merchant group, Mok In Seop, arrived, bringing a letter from the main clan to the young master Lee Jin-eon. Upon seeing him, he was completely shocked. The man before him was muscular, well-defined, and carried a dominant presence. He looked like a completely different person. He wondered if that really was the same weak young master from before. Lee Jin-eon noticed that the guard was distracted and told him to hand over the letter right away. Mok In Seop quickly apologized and obeyed. Later, while reading the letter, Lee Jin-eon discovered that his father had collapsed and was now bedridden. The letter did not explain the cause of the illness. The guard explained that everything was likely related to the Ouyang clan, which had been demanding tributes under the pretext of protection fees. Those payments had piled up and turned into a snowball. Lee Jin-eon asked whether the Ouyang clan had done anything to justify such an increase. Mok In Seop replied that they had not, that those dogs were simply abusing the situation. Even when the small divinity sect tried to impose absurd trade taxes, the Ouyang clan simply declared that any issue should be taken up with the main clan of the Unha merchant group. No one was able to contest it, not even the captain of the guards, because they were talking about Ouyang Hu, a name known in the martial world, and strong enough to cause serious trouble. Lee Jin-eon had already heard of him. He was a powerful man and likely believed that the Yuna merchant group was beneath his clan. He asked whether solving the issue with the Ouyang clan would be enough. The guard replied that it would not be easy, and added that there was another crucial reason for his father's collapse. There had been a sword fight between the 2nd and 3rd young masters. After witnessing that, the leader collapsed. Lee Jin-eon questioned whether the old man had really fallen from anger. Mok In Seop confirmed that he had. Outraged, Lee Jin-eon said he could not believe the two had fought in front of the leader, and with swords at that. The guard tried to reassure him, saying that it would not bring direct harm to him, but Lee Jin-eon stated that he would not stand there watching everything fall apart. He handed the letter back to the guard and declared that he would personally go visit his father. When Mok In Seop returned to headquarters, he commented that the young master had completely changed. He said that Lee Jin-eon now looked like a perfect martial artist, with an impressive body that even inspired envy. The other guards laughed at him. No one believed that the infamous Lee Jin-eon could have turned into a true martial artist. To them, that was impossible. The guards kept laughing and saying it was impossible. They said Lee Jin-eon only knew how to drink and chase after women, that he was a complete scoundrel. One of them even said that if he was going to make up a joke, he should at least try harder, because even saying that the vice captain had another mistress would be more convincing. At that exact moment, the vice captain appeared behind him and immediately grabbed him by the head. It was Han Yup. Calmly, but squeezing firmly, he asked whether the young master had truly recovered his health. He commented that Lee Jin-eon had always had an excellent physique, he just never knew how to use it. Meanwhile, he tightened his grip even more on the head of the guard who had been talking nonsense. Then he asked Mok In Seop if he knew when the young master intended to return to the main house. Mok replied that he was not sure. He only knew that he planned to go personally. At that moment, Lee Jin-eon himself appeared, and Mok remarked that apparently it would be now. Han Yup ordered everyone to greet the young master. One of the guards grumbled, asking if it was really necessary to treat someone useless with such formality. The vice captain replied that that useless man was the one who fed them and told everyone to stop complaining. When Lee Jin-eon arrived at the main house, he was impressed. In his past life, he had only heard of the Yuna merchant group, but the place was stunning. It was practically another world. He thought that the previous owner of that body had truly been born with a silver spoon, and that he was unbelievably lucky. He told the servants who had accompanied him that they could rest, as he would go see his father immediately. He also questioned why no one was there to receive the young master. Soon after, the guard committee of the main house appeared to welcome him. The vice captain congratulated him on his safe return, and commented that he was almost unrecognizable, saying it was a relief to see him healthy. Some guards whispered among themselves, thinking that the vice captain had no pride, since Lee Jin-eon had always looked down on him in the past, and even so he continued to treat the young master with respect. Everyone expected the vice captain to be mocked again, but to everyone's surprise, Lee Jin-eon bowed to him and thanked him for his work and for the reception. That left everyone confused. Had he really changed? Was Mok In Seop right? Even the guards began to admit that something felt strange. Han Yup commented that the young master finally no longer looked like an enemy, but like an ally. He then guided Lee Jin-eon to his father's residence and informed him that his arrival had already been announced. As they walked through the corridors, a mocking voice appeared, saying that if it was not the pervert Lee Jin-eon, then who could it be? The one who showed up was Lee Ja-eon, the third son. He commented that Lee Jin-eon's expression made him look like a different person and tried to grab his shoulder in a provocative manner. The vice captain thought that was bad, imagining that the young master would be humiliated again right after returning. Before the situation got worse, the vice captain tried to intervene, saying it was a reunion after a long time and that everyone must be emotional, but Lee Ja-eon asked who had given permission for someone to touch him without authorization, and in a quick motion, slapped the vice captain across the face, making it clear that he would handle it himself. Right after that, Lee Jin-eon struck his third brother across the face with a slap so strong that it knocked him to the ground. Lee Ja-eon was stunned, unable to understand what had just happened. Lee Jin-eon said he had been excited the entire way there, and that he wanted to repay the favors from the past. Then he gripped the third son's shoulder with such force that he began to cry out in pain. The third shouted, asking if he had gone insane. Lee Jin-eon replied that insane was the way they had treated him, and that they should call him older brother, demanding respect. Not long after, the second son appeared upon noticing the commotion near their father's room. It was Lee Hwa-eon. He approached the vice captain and asked what had happened. The vice explained that there had been an argument between the first and third young masters. As soon as he arrived, Lee Hwa-eon thought that the third must have provoked the first again, as he always did, and questioned why the vice had not stopped the fight. But when he rushed to see it for himself, he found Lee Jin-eon completely dominating his younger brother. In front of their father's room, the three finally stood face to face. Lee Hwa-eon commented that he had heard about his brother's return and that he looked very healthy. Lee Jin-eon confirmed that he was better and asked if the injury on his hand had been caused by the third. The second replied that it was nothing serious. Even so, Lee Jin-eon slapped the third brother again and declared that he should never raise a sword against his own brother. He asked if he understood. The third, already battered and humiliated, could not believe what was happening. He wondered how the brother who used to be weak had become strong enough to defeat him so easily. Lee Hwa-eon did not expect that turn of events. In the past, the most he could do was avoid being beaten by Lee Ja-eon. He asked if something had happened at the country estate because his brother seemed like a completely different person. Lee Jin-eon replied that it had, but that he would explain later, and then asked what all those scrolls spread across the table were. Lee Hwa-eon explained that it was the list of maids and staff who would be presented at the conference the next day. The first name on the list was Gu Eung-soon, the former physician. At that moment, Lee Jin-eon understood. He had been trying to find out who had recommended the physician to reach him, who was behind the assassination attempt. Now he had found the perfect evidence. The one who had recommended that entire list, from the vice leader of the guards to the men at the main gate, had been Young-hoo himself. The atmosphere grew heavy. Lee Jin-eon looked at his brothers and said that if either of them was working with the Young clan, it would be better to speak now. The two became tense. Lee Hwa-eon asked if he really believed that was possible. Lee Ja-eon replied that he would rather die than betray his own family, and that there would always be another member of the clan capable of taking over the business, but he would never allow their father's work to be stolen. He stated that the Yunha merchant group was a treasure built through his father's hard work, something he had devoted his entire life to, and that now there were people trying to take advantage of it. Lee Hwa-eon fully agreed. Lee Jin-eon said he was glad to hear that, and asked if the higher-ups would also be attending the conference. His brother confirmed it, curious about the reason. Lee Jin-eon replied that it was nothing special, only that he would also be present. After that, he left to visit his father. Lee Hwa-eon stood there, still unable to understand how his brother had changed so much, muttering that maybe he himself should have gone to that country house. Later, the servants informed the head of the family that the eldest son had arrived. Lee Sung-min, leader of the Unha merchant group, and father of the three brothers, asked if it was really Lee Jin-eon, and wanted to know what all that commotion outside had been about. Lee Jin-eon replied that it was nothing he needed to worry about. He said he had heard that his father had fallen ill from stress and did not want to make things worse. Lee Sung-min commented that he had always lived under pressure, but now his aging body could no longer endure it. He looked at his son and said he seemed different, that it was good to see him healthy. That moved Lee Jin-eon. In his previous life, Dan Woo-sung had never known his own parents. He did not know what it was like to have a fatherly relationship, but now he also carried the memories of the former owner of that body, and in those memories, the father was an admirable man. He told Lee Sung-min not to worry, that it would be enough to eliminate the cause of the stress and everything would be fine. His father asked what he meant by that. Lee Jin-eon told him to trust him. As he smiled, his father noticed that there was something different in his eyes. The next day, the Una Merchant Group conference began. Among those present was Young-hoo, leader of the guard squad of the group, and also a martial master of the Young clan. Some members whispered when they noticed Lee Jin-eon's presence, asking what the eldest son was doing there. Young-hoo commented that he must be worried about his own position in the group. Lee Hwa-eon, trying to maintain order, asked if anyone had a different opinion and suggested moving on to the next topic. But Young-hoo said he had something to say. He declared that the first young master did not have personal guards, and that despite having returned, he needed someone trustworthy, and that he had a recommendation. Some people murmured that the man did not know when to stop. Young-hoo heard the comment, and with a quick movement, threw a needle that shattered the teacup of one of those present. In a cold tone, he said his hand had slipped and asked if anyone had any objections to his suggestion. Then Lee Jin-eon raised his hand and said he had complaints. He stated that he would also like to make a suggestion. He walked to the front, placed his finger very close to Ouyang-ha's face, and declared that he should be dismissed from his position as leader of the guard squad. The entire room was in shock. Ouyang-hu asked if he really wanted to dismiss him, reminding him that it was not something under the young master's authority, especially after being away for so long. Without replying with words, Lee Jin-eon struck the table with force. The impact was so powerful that the wood shattered into charred fragments. Silence took over the hall. Then he declared that perhaps everyone had forgotten, but the Una merchant group belonged to him. Earlier he had discussed all of this with the second son, Hua Aeon. He asked if his brother really intended to attend the conference. Just to dismiss Captain Ouyang-hu, Hua Aeon warned that they were only a merchant group, and that they could not simply provoke the Ouyang clan like that. But Lee Jin-eon replied by asking if he knew what happened when a martial artist was underestimated. Those who made that kind of assumption ended up being devoured. He then told his brother to look at the current state of the honor group, which was already being swallowed little by little. Hua Aeon realized he was right, because there were too many people from the Ouyang clan taking space and seizing control from within. Even so, Lee Jin-eon told him not to worry, because the older brother would take care of everything. Now, in the present, Ha Aeon wondered if this was what he had meant, because Lee Jin-eon had just shattered the table in front of everyone. The members of the Ouyang clan immediately advanced, drawing their swords and demanding to know what he thought he was doing. Ouyang-hu himself thought the boy had finally gone mad. That was when Han Yo questioned how they dared to raise swords against the young master, and the guards of the honor group also drew theirs, making the atmosphere even more tense. Lee Jin-eon said that it was truly insolent, because they were pointing swords at their own employer. To him, that was practically a death wish. He added that he even felt a bit sorry for the leader of the guards, and that he would consider it a kind of compensation for ruining his retirement plans. He explained that the one who had ordered the physician Gu-ung Sun-young to assassinate him while he was recovering had been Ouyang-hu himself. On top of that, he had also instigated a conflict between the second and third sons, which ended up causing their father to collapse. All of that after convincing one of the brothers that he could take over the honor merchant group without even lifting a finger. Ouyang-hu replied that the story was good enough to become a stage play, but that it was nothing more than fiction. Even so, Lee Jin-eon continued, saying that Gu-ung Sun-myung, who was supposed to have killed him, had died by his own hands. That was when fate began to change. Ouyang-hu was shocked and asked if he had really killed Gu-ung Sun. Lee Jin-eon told him not to feel sad, because he had finished him with a single strike and did not make him suffer. He added that if he wanted to devour such a large merchant group, he should have put in more effort. He even said he would file a complaint for the damage to the table, since everything had been Ouyang-hu's fault. Calling the young master an arrogant brat, Ouyang-hu launched an attack on Lee Jin-eon, exactly what he wanted. The moment he received the strike, Lee Jin-eon responded with his white lightning fist. Ouyang-hu was stunned and wondered since when he had learned martial arts, because the two were evenly matched in power. Everyone around them was astonished, since no one had imagined that Lee Jin-eon could fight, much less at that level. Lee Jin-eon questioned whether it was right to attack someone who had just recovered from an illness, but soon said that maybe it was fine, since it was now considered an official duel. Ouyang-hu, consumed by anger, declared that he would finish off that conceited man, and ordered the witnesses from the Ouyang clan to record that, with the consent of the young master Lee Jin-eon, the official duel had begun. He asked if that was enough, but Lee Jin-eon replied that it was not an ordinary duel, but one of life and death. Ouyang-hu commented that he must have studied in some impressive sect, because in such a short time he had reached a decent level of skill, but that he still lacked experience. He said he would end him right there. Lee Jin-eon dodged the first sword strike and asked what kind of experience he thought he had to speak like that. Then, with the fist he had kept hidden behind his back, he unleashed a lightning strike that sent Ouyang-hu flying with devastating force. Without giving him any chance to react, Lee Jin-eon advanced, using the art of illuminated movement, moving so fast that it was almost impossible to follow with the eyes. He was already pressuring Ouyang-hu's sword, who struggled to evade and began to realize that something was wrong. Those movements did not resemble someone who had just learned martial arts, but rather an experienced master who had been reborn. Desperate, Ouyang-hu invoked the three-form sword technique, a technique that the Ouyang clan believed was enough to end the fight. He declared that he would kill that boy right there, but Lee Jin-eon had already anticipated the move, dodged with a quick step and advanced again. His right hook was so powerful that it sent Ouyang-hu crashing through the ceiling, launching his body far away. From the main residence, Song-min was able to see the body being thrown through the air, and commented that it seemed his son had truly learned martial arts. When Ouyang-hu returned to the ground, the entire Ouyang clan grew uneasy. Lee Jin-eon then asked what they would do now, and whether they also intended to kill him. One of the members replied that the duel had no irregularities, but made it clear that if the Ouyang clan insisted on seeking revenge through new duels, the consequences would be even more severe from that point on. The Yunha merchant group would have no way to avoid a confrontation with the Ouyang clan. Lee Jin-eon replied that it was fine, because he had never expected them to be free of resentment. treatment. If someone showed kindness, he would repay it with kindness. If they showed hostility, he would return it in equal measure. And if anyone disagreed with that, the responsibility would fall solely on him, not on the Yuna merchant group. Even so, Ouyang-hu warned his brother that it was far too dangerous. Li Jin-en replied that the group belonged to him, to his father, and also to the guard squad that had taken him in, as well as to the servants who were happy just to see him eat. The merchant group had no intention of being deceived by scum like the Ouyang clan, and if they understood the message, then they should leave, because they were all dismissed. One of the guards left satisfied, wishing him luck. Li Jin-eon then looked at his people, and Mok In-seop commented excitedly that he had really won. Another quickly warned that it was not the time to celebrate, because they could be punished for simply standing by. Li Jin-eon, however, only asked Hua Aeon to bring him an elixir, since the responsibility was entirely his and it would be fair to receive some support. Hua Aeon replied that of course, he would prepare a tonic of the highest quality. From now on, he would be busy buying elixirs and hiring new guards. That was when Li Jin-eon mentioned that he already had some people in mind for the guard squad. A few days earlier, on the first day Li Jin-eon arrived at the main merchant group, he had asked Huan Yope if he had already eaten. The guard replied that he had not, because he had been working since dawn. Li Jin-eon noticed that. Meanwhile, Zhou Yang's guards were eating, having fun, and doing everything except working. That irritated him, because they were living off other people's money. He decided that he would expel all of them, but he needed someone to take their place. In the present, he went to the perfect place to find that kind of people. As soon as he entered the establishment, one of the men commented that it was not that fool, the young master of the Huan merchant group. Some people whispered that it really was him, thinking he had been dead, and wondered how much money he would waste this time. Li Jin-en ignored everything, and walked silently to a more private area of that pleasure house, that also functioned as a tavern. A guard commented that it had been a while since he last appeared, and implied that he had finally returned to being a generous fool. Li Jin-eon told them not to touch him, because he did not want to dirty himself with pig grease, and walked through the door, leaving the guard furious. He entered the room of Chul Myun-ho, known as the Poison Fox. Chul Myun-ho commented that recovery had done him good, and the two guards beside him, the twin brothers Yuk Jumbo and Yuk Myung-bu, also greeted him. Chul Myung-ho pretended to be concerned, saying that a friend had been sick and had finally recovered, so there should be more excitement. Li Jin-eon knew that those two were his childhood friends, although the friendship was marked by one-sided violence and financial exploitation. Between them, the definition of friendship was quite different. Chul Myung-ho commented that after so long, he could now enjoy himself and have fun. Deep down, he thought there was no one from whom he could squeeze more money than Li Jin-eon. He said that to celebrate the young master's return, he could offer something big, but found it strange that he was so quiet. Li Jin-eon was simply thinking about whether he should kill him or not, although he did not say it out loud. What he needed was not Chul Myung-ho, but the twins behind him, who did all the heavy work and lived as thugs under his command. They were far too valuable to keep rotting there, so Li Jin-eon first asked them to hand over the key to the vault. Chul Myung-ho asked what he was talking about, and whether he wanted money. Li Jin-eon confirmed that yes, for now he would only take the money. There were thousands of niang that he had been forced to invest in the casino, along with interest and extorted money, so 100,000 niang would be a fair amount. Chul Myung-ho laughed at him and asked if everyone was seeing this, calling the young master crazy. He said that the vault did not only contain 100,000 niang, but also jewels, gold and silver, and none of that was for him. If he needed money, he could ask for a loan, but questioned what that sudden need for the key was. He mocked him, saying that before, Li Jin-eon acted like an innocent pig, and now he showed up with a grim face demanding the key, asking if he knew who he was talking to and if he wanted to die. Without receiving an answer, Chul Myung-ho lost his patience and ordered the guards to take Li Jin-en down immediately. When one of the twins tried to move forward, he could not even budge Li Jin-eon. He commented that he had even gone out of his way to show kindness, but since they did not accept it, they would receive the opposite. With a single movement, he threw the first twin away, sending him crashing through several walls. The second tried to land a punch, but his attack was dodged, and he received a sweep so powerful that the bones in his leg broke instantly. Even so, to Li Jin-eon's surprise, both of them stood up again. Even with broken fists and ankles, they insisted on standing. That was exactly why he wanted them. The two charged again, but Li Jin-eon vanished from in front of them. He appeared behind them, grabbed their bald heads, and commented that they were far too valuable to rot in a place like that. Then he slammed one head against the other and told them to stay very still. Now all that was left was to deal with that so-called friend, Chul Myung-ho, who was clearly nervous. Chul Myung-ho said that he should have mentioned he spent his recovery studying martial arts instead of arithmetic. As he approached with a knife, Li Jin-en remarked that he was usually quick to understand the situation. Even so, Chul Myung-ho advanced, saying that the first strike always wins. But that was not what happened. He took a literal blow straight to the face, a strike so strong that the table shattered, and from behind the fragments emerged Li Jin-en's hand, which electrocuted his entire body with the white lightning technique. After throwing the poison fox to the ground, he told him to wake up. Lying there, Chul Myung-ho began to wonder what that man had done during his recovery. Why? Had he trained in secret? Was all of this revenge? He thought that maybe he really wanted to kill him. Desperate, he asked if it was the keys he wanted and said he would hand over anything. After all, they were childhood friends. Lee Jin-aeon replied that yes, of course, they were good friends. Chol Myung-ho then hugged him, pretending intimacy, saying there was no need for violence anymore, that they were true friends. He told the twins to greet their new older brother and congratulate him on his transformation. Lee Jin-aeon replied that he really had become stronger. Deep down, Chol Myung-ho thought he had always been a little dog, and that as soon as they left, he would take the twins and run away to start another business. But Lee Jin-aeon asked if they were friends for life, and if he was sure about that. Chol Myung-ho confirmed it, and the twins said they would serve Lee Jin-aeon as their older brother from now on. Then he declared that if they were brothers, they needed to decide who was older between the two of them, and told them to leave the room to settle it. The twins obeyed immediately, leaving the two alone. As soon as they were alone, Lee Jin-aeon called Chol Myung-ho to settle things once and for all. He said that he had profited too much off naive people, and that it was not the right way to act, but now he would learn properly. Chol Myung-ho begged him to just take the money, saying he had already been beaten enough, and asked if he still intended to take the twins, because that would be like sentencing him to death. Lee Jin-aeon replied that then everything was settled. The first kick knocked out teeth and a lot of blood from Chol Myung-ho. After that, it became a completely one-sided beating. He realized that he really could die there. Desperate, he said he would hand over the key and begged for his life. But that was not enough. Lee Jin-aeon threw him out of the room. The twins became worried and asked if he had lost. Humiliated, Chol Myung-ho replied that yes, he had lost, and that from now on, Lee Jin-eun was their older brother. Even feeling completely broken inside, he thought that maybe it would be better for the twins to work in a real merchant group than to remain in that filthy casino. The two simply thanked him for everything and left. Later, Chol Myung-ho climbed the casino stairs, complaining about the ungrateful bald heads. He crossed the hall, badly injured, with everyone commenting on his defeat. Some took advantage of his weakened state and surrounded him to settle old scores. Vulnerable, he truly thought he would die that night. But before they could attack him, Lee Jin-aeon appeared and protected him. He said that those men did not even have the courage to face him before, but now they all advanced together like cowards just because he was weak. If they wanted to kill him, they would have to go through him first. At the same time, he told the twins to keep collecting everything. Chol Myung-ho thought that idiot was acting all cool, but thanks to that, he managed to cross the bar without being beaten again. As they left together, the twins and Lee Jin-aeon thanked him for helping their brother Chol Myung-ho. Even after everything, they still called him brother. They continued carrying the boxes in silence. Lee Jin-aeon knew that everyone who had ever passed through that casino asked the same question. Why did those two follow Chol Myung-ho? Some said they had been sold as slaves. Others thought it was just fear. Lee Jin-aeon himself had once thought the same. But it could not be just fear or slavery, because their loyalty seemed to go beyond that. Even in his second life, he still could not fully understand the true intentions of people. Later, at the Yuna merchant group, Lee Ja-aeon was clearly dissatisfied. He said he had not had a single peaceful day since his brother returned. First he brought a mountain of money, then he showed up with those two big guys out of nowhere. He really did not like that guy. Then they heard a loud noise coming from outside. It was horses approaching with several carriages loaded with goods. Hwa-aeon began organizing everything, and Lee Ja-aeon asked what that was. He saw that they were extremely rare ingredients for high-quality elixirs. Soon after, Seungmin appeared, saying that he was the one who had placed the order. Hwa-in asked if he was already well enough to be walking around like that. Seungmin replied that he was feeling better. Then Lee Ja-in asked what he intended to do with so many elixirs. Lee Ja-in thought that a single person would not consume all of that, so maybe one would be left for him. But Seungmin made it clear that they were all for the older brother. Surprised, Lee Ja-eon asked if they were really all for him, because there were enough ingredients to produce a large quantity. Lee Ja-eon explained that a single elixir was not enough to change a destiny. After everything they had already spent on the Uyang clan and the small divinity sect, that was still far from being excessive. Seungmin said that he had sent letters to branch leaders, old friends, and respected merchants, explaining that they were urgently purchasing elixirs to overcome a crisis threatening the group. If the group collapsed, everyone would suffer losses, so they took the situation seriously. Since he was the one who had assigned the Ouyang clan, he would take responsibility and fix his own mistakes. Vice Captain Han commented that it was a wise decision and that the first young master would certainly become a great martial artist. Lee Ja-aeon felt completely out of place in that conversation. Su-min also said that this was the perfect opportunity to use all the money he had accumulated throughout his life. Later, Lee Ja-aeon was dejected and trained furiously. He had asked his father where his elixir was, but Seungmin only questioned whether he really needed one. Now he was taking it all out on the training dummies, saying that wherever he went he only heard his brother's name, Lee Jin-eun, everywhere, and that he gained nothing. He felt discriminated against. He kept wondering what kind of miracle had fallen upon his brother that had never fallen upon him. Suddenly, he heard a heavy sound approaching. It was Lee Jin-eon himself, passing by him like a train during his morning walk, except that this walk consisted of dragging a stone of nearly 1 ton while running. Lee Ja-eon was stunned and wondered if that really was a simple walk. He thought that his brother, brother, who was already born lucky, had now decided to truly work hard, while he himself was being left behind. He continued training until the end of the day, trying to replicate the moves he had seen his brother use against Ouyang-hu, but he could not understand that technique. He muttered angrily, calling someone a bastard. Then he heard Li Jin-An's voice asking who he was talking about. Li Jia-An was startled and explained that he was not talking about him. He asked about the walk, and Li Jin-An replied that he had already finished. He said that if he was going to review the movements, he needed to do it properly. Then he handed the sword to his younger brother and told him to repeat the technique used against Ouyang-hu. Li Jia-An executed the strike precisely, piercing through the training dummy. At least that was how he saw it. But Li Jin-An commented that the attack was sloppy. Li Jia-An asked why he was talking like that, but when he turned around he almost took a direct punch and only managed to block it in time with his sword. Li Jin-An explained that after such a predictable strike, he would have been destroyed by a simple feint because the distance would be closed immediately. Li Jia-An could barely react and could only defend himself in a disorganized way while his brother pressured him. He asked why they were replicating a fight like that and told him they should talk calmly, but he realized that Li Jin-An was not even listening, completely focused on demonstrating the difference in level between them. Then Li Jia-An rushed forward with his sword, trying to duel for real, but Li Jin-An had already disappeared. In the blink of an eye he was behind him and calmly explained that when someone loses the advantage and is cornered, they always reveal their best card. The next punch came heavy, so strong that it almost killed Li Jia-An, but it stopped just a centimeter from his jaw. The younger one fell back, terrified, thinking he really would have died. Li Jin-An commented that thrusting attacks actually have a much lower hit rate than slashing attacks. In addition, the three-form sword art of Ouyang-hu was a lethal technique, so he had to be careful with how he executed it. He won because he moved quickly and gave no openings. He thought that in his past life, someone like Ouyang-hu would not even have time to draw his sword against him. But at that moment, his body was not even a quarter of what it used to be back when he was known as the King of Fists. It made no sense to be satisfied with defeating someone like Ouyang-hu who was weak. There were people that even he, at his peak, could not surpass. And that could not continue. He would become even stronger than before. At that moment, a servant appeared saying that he had visitors. Li Jin-An replied that he was already done there and would come in a moment. Before leaving, he flicked his younger brother on the head and said he only did that because he had called himself a bastard. Meanwhile, the visitors were saying they did not believe the rumors about the young master. They said he only knew how to chase women and would never train in martial arts. Gu-ung said he had seen it with his own eyes, because one night while drunk he passed by the casino and saw Li Jin-An leaving, but then turned to throw up and did not see anything else. A woman commented that was exactly why they came to check if he was still the same. When the door opened, they came face to face with a very muscular Li Jin-An, surrounded by the twins. She immediately closed the door and asked the servant if that really was the young master, wondering if the group leader had adopted another child. The servant confirmed that it was indeed him. The woman said she must be hallucinating and that she had drunk too much. Another man said that was ridiculous because he was way too muscular and it made no sense. Then Li Jin-An opened the door again, startling everyone. He told Miao Yang, the servant, to take the twins to the dining hall and give them very large bowls because they ate a lot. She replied, "Yes, young master," and guided the two outside. Li Jin-An then welcomed the visitors politely and asked why they were still standing there, telling them to come in. They were clearly afraid. They were known as the four heavenly kings of wine and women. Sima Gyuk, the promising member of the Murim alliance. Ju Jaryang, who was always taking exams because of irritable bowel syndrome. Gu-ung, the youngest heir of the escort house. And Li Jin-An himself, who used to be part of the group. They had gathered after hearing the unbelievable rumor that their naive friend had returned completely different. They sat down to eat in silence. Li Jin-An thought that once again he was there with his self-proclaimed friends. He remembered going out with them to drink and chase women, calling themselves kings of something silly he barely even remembered. Ju Jaryang asked if he was really fine, because he looked more than recovered. He looked intense. Guang asked how he had gotten such a muscular arm like that, wondering if he had been secretly training non-stop. Sima Gyuk was the only one who seemed to truly reflect, thinking that it was not possible to reach that level in just 1 year of normal training. That was the level of advanced martial arts. They had also heard that he defeated Ouyang-hu and asked who had taught him martial arts, because it was hard to believe he had learned it alone. Li Jin-An replied that he had been lucky in that fight. Sima Gyuk said it sounded like something out of those Murim stories where someone suddenly gains enlightenment. Then Li Jin-Yan declared that the old Li Jin-Yan was dead. He said that now he had plans for the future, that he had scores to settle with the demonic cult, that he would help the merchant group while preparing for that. He was not interested in anything other than becoming stronger. The others kept wondering what had happened to him. To them, Li Jin-Yan was completely different and far too strange. Sima remembered a conversation he had with Li Jin-Yan 1 year earlier, when he asked if he was going somewhere to recover, thinking that could be something good. At the time, Li Jin-Yan said it was basically an exile, and that his father must be very disappointed in him. Then Sima told him he could use that time to recover, study, study and change. Lee Jin-eon said it would be great if he could actually do that. Now, in the present, Sima congratulated his friend because he had truly changed. The others did not want to say anything because they were nervous, but Jeryeong confirmed that it was true, that he was much better, and that it deserved to be celebrated. Gu-eung said he already knew this would happen. Because of that conversation, Lee Jin-eon realized that they were real friends and that he truly had people by his side. He admitted that he had changed, but asked how they were doing, because they did not seem to have changed much at all. The group felt a bit awkward, so Lee Jin-eon suggested changing the subject, and they all made a toast together. Deep down, they had always felt like frogs at the bottom of a well, but now they realized that one of them had managed to climb out and finally see the world outside. Late at night, after a lot of drinking and fun, the group began to leave carefully to avoid causing trouble on the streets. Goon commented that, out of all of them, the most hopeless one had come back all grown up, and that their youth was coming to an end. Sima said he was feeling a bit lonely, and that it was better to go home soon, but Goon suggested stopping by the perfume house first. Jaryang said that if they were going, he would go too. Meanwhile, at the sweet perfume house, the leader of the small divinity sect, Yeom-ji-song, received the news that Young-hoo was dead. He asked if the heir of the merchant group was really that strong, and the guard confirmed that he was, saying that he crushed the captain with his bare fists. When he recovered the captain's body and stood before the young master Lee Jin-eon, he felt a pressure he had never experienced before. Those were extraordinary skills. Yeom-ji-song asked what kind of weapon he had used, and the guard replied that it was only his fists. That irritated Yeom-ji-song, who said it was a disgrace for a swordsman to lose to a young martial artist fighting unarmed. The guard then asked about revenge, but Yeom-ji-song said they could not seek revenge for a fair and open duel because they were not bandits. The guard insisted, talking about friendship and honor, but when his tone rose, Yeom-ji-song drew his sword and cut off his head without hesitation, saying that he did not make friends with corpses and ordering the body to be removed. The woman beside him was terrified, covered in blood. Yeom-ji-song apologized for not noticing she was there and complained that the drink had been ruined with everything dirty, asking for the place to be cleaned. Even so, he said that matter was not settled yet and that he would settle accounts with the merchant group. One of his men commented that this meant they were not even being respected by the small divinity sect after all that commotion, and asked if they were going to kill everyone. Yeom-ji-song replied that they could not just go around killing people because they were not gangsters, but the man questioned if they would simply let it go. At that moment, Lee Jin-eon's group of friends, known as the Four Heavenly Kings of the Poison of Women, entered the sweet perfume while still talking about how their friend had changed. Yeom-ji-song deliberately spoke loud enough for them to hear, saying that he really wanted the money of the merchant group, and that old Lee Sung-min was an excellent negotiator, with rumors even saying he was richer than he seemed. He said he would like to know how much their heir was worth now. The only one who heard everything was Sima Gyuk, who became worried and ran to warn Lee Jin-eon. Upon hearing it, Lee Jin-eon replied that it was touching that his friend had come back so late just to warn him. Sima said that was no time for jokes, because it seemed like they would attack immediately, and explained that now that Hugh was dead, his house did not have proper guards, asking what they should do. Lee Jin-eon vaguely remembered the small divinity sect. They were the same ones Mok and Sep had said were trying to make a move on Hu. He asked where their base was, and Sema replied that they were probably at their headquarters. Lee Jin told him to go inside for now, and handed him some dark clothes. He said they were in the guard team storage, and asked if Sema knew the way to the base of the small divinity sect, because they could still make it back in time for breakfast. Sema was shocked when he realized that Lee Jin intended to go to their base right now, just the two of them, and said that was madness, because the place must be full and they would die. But Lee Jin simply picked up his small knife and said that was exactly why they needed to move first. Then he told Sema, the hopeful one of the Murim alliance, to lead the way. Later, already at the base of the small divinity sect, Lee Jin was on top of a tree, observing everything from above. He analyzed the guards' shifts and realized that the surveillance was heavy, especially at that time of night. Sema asked if he was sure that was the place, and said he would not ask for help, but he also did not know how to fight like that. Lee Jin replied that Sema's job was already done. He only needed to bring him there. Even a bit irritated, Sema warned that the inside was full of guards, and asked what the plan was to get in, if there was some kind of brilliant strategy, but Lee Jin simply said that, for today they would do it the easiest way, and kicked the door open. Since childhood, when he was still known as Dan Woo-sung, he had never avoided a fight. Not when he was an orphan, not when he wandered through the Murim world, and much less when he conquered the throne of King of Fists with pure strength. As he broke the door open, all the guards looked at him immediately. Wherever he went, he had always been a man who loved to fight. He walked through the hall past the guards as if they were nothing, and asked where the sect leader was. One of the men tried to stop him, asking if he really thought he could enter like that. Lee Jin grabbed him by the neck and warned that he did not want to repeat the question. He snapped the guard's neck and threw him to the ground, making the others mobilize. The leader, Yeom-ji-sung, observed the young man and asked who he was. Lee Jin replied that he was just an assassin and asked if he was the leader. Yeom-ji-sung said maybe he was, and commented that he had never seen an assassin enter through the front door. Looking Looking more closely, he noticed his calloused hands and suspected he was the young master of the Honor Merchant Guild. Li Jin asked what would change if he was. Yeomji-sang did not expect someone of that status to come personally, and decided he would not hold back. A net was thrown to capture him, while the guards advanced. Li Jin dodged and thought it had been a long time since he last faced multiple opponents at once, maybe since the clash against the demonic cult. Even with his body still far from its peak, he grabbed the net and began using it like a whip, knocking down guards, cutting limbs, and breaking swords. He did not even need a weapon. He was enjoying himself in the middle of the chaos. Those who were still standing began calling him a monster. Even so, someone managed to strike his face fast enough to cause a cut. Li Jin asked if Yeomji-sang's weapon was just decoration. Yeomji-sang replied that he did not want to use it because it was expensive, but that he would make an exception for a special guest. He revealed a hand crossbow, while the guards, even in fear, held Li Jin for a moment. Yeomji-sang asked if he could dodge that. It was not just him who was armed. All the guards on that floor were also holding crossbows, and fired at the same time. Li Jin realized that Yeomji-sang was willing to shoot even with his own disciples in the line of fire, something despicable even for the underworld. At that moment, someone helped Li Jin by throwing a knife in his direction. He caught it midair and used it to deflect and break all the bolts. Yeomji-sang was surprised to see that he had deflected everything with just a knife. Li Jin looked up and made a gesture of thanks to Sima, who returned the gesture nervously. Right after that, Li Jin threw the knife at Yeomji-sang, who managed to dodge, suffering only a small cut on the neck. Li Jin commented that he did not usually use a sword, but would make an exception if necessary. Yeomji-sang ordered the guards to kill him immediately, but Li Jin had already advanced in the blink of an eye, ready to use his specialty, his fists. Desperate, Yeomji-sang pulled a woman and placed her in front of him as a shield. Li Jin's lightning punch exploded part of the floor. When the dust settled, he was holding the woman, protecting her from the impact, and told her to move away while he finished things. Yeomji-sang began to wonder who that man really was, because the young master he knew was seen as a failure, but the way he fought was that of an experienced veteran. Li Jin provoked him, asking if he had anything to say. With no way out, Yeomji-sang tried to negotiate, saying he had a lot of money saved and could pay whatever was necessary for his life. Li Jin responded by stepping on his face and asked why he always compared human life with money. He grabbed a handful of coins and said he did not need that. As he kept punching Yeomji-sang, using his own fists filled with coins, he pierced straight through that coward's heart. Then he commented that his blood was disgusting. In the end, just as he had promised, they really did return in time for breakfast. After everything, Li Jin, Sima, and the woman he had rescued walked together for part of the way. Sima said that from there he would head in another direction, and that he could escort the young lady to a safe place. Li Jin agreed, and let him handle it. Along the way, the woman asked if he was Sima Gek because she had seen him several times at the sweet perfume house, but since he was close friends with Li Jin, that was already obvious. She thanked him for what happened that night, and said that if he passed by again, she would serve him a bottle of wine. Sima replied that he had not done anything special, because Li Jin had handled everything, and mentioned that he did not plan to keep visiting pleasure houses. She said he had changed a lot. Sima admitted that he needed to change too, since his friend had changed so much. Meanwhile, Li Jin was already thinking about breakfast. He returned home and sat down to eat a real feast. Accompanied by the twins, who were excited, he gave them permission to eat as much as they wanted, saying that if they were hungry, they did not need to hold back, and could even go for more. The two asked if 7 meals a day would not be too much, but Li Jin said they could eat as much as they wanted. One of the twins noticed the injury on his face and asked if he was okay. Li Jin replied that he was more or less fine. Even though it had been a sudden attack, he had never had his foundation shaken like that in his past life. He thought that if he wanted to protect the merchant group alone, facing increasingly stronger martial artists, training alone would not be enough. He needed something beyond that. At that moment, Myo Hang knocked on the door, saying there was a delivery for him. Li Jin opened the package and found a small box along with a letter from Guang. In the letter, Guang said that after they parted ways, he stopped at a tavern to drink a bit before leaving and asked if that already counted as progress. He explained that he was delivering what he had promised, but ended up forgetting earlier. He also said that his father asked him to deliver it, and that when Li Jin became stronger, he should help manage the escort agency. After finishing reading, Li Jin opened the box and found several century-old roots, aged for at least 400 years. With luck, that could raise his martial art to the 5th level. He thought that was what it meant to have a good friend. There was also another letter, addressed to Song Min, his father. The gift came from the Taeho Trading Company, the richest in the Central Plains, sent in the name of an old friendship. Li Jin wondered why his father had gone so far as to ask for their help. He did not expect that much consideration. Inside the other box was the pure void stone milk, a miraculous elixir that martial artists could only dream of possessing. Only legendary items like 1000-year spirit fruits, the moon elixir flower, or a millennium ginseng could compare to it, and many would fight to the death for such things. Li Jin had no doubt it was authentic. Even in his past life as the King of Fists, he had only managed to taste a few drops. He truly did not understand how a merchant had obtained such a valuable item. He then told the twins to each take one of the roots and said he would begin circulating his ki, asking them to guard the room. When they asked what it was, he replied that it was good for the body and very rare, so they should not waste it. One of the twins commented that the leader had accumulated boxes and boxes of rare items for him, revealing a cabinet full of valuable goods. Li Jin thought that money really was something very useful. About 2 hours later, he was already circulating his energy. The elixir tasted bitter, but had no smell, just like martial arts. Training was painful, and often seemed useless, but it warmed the core. If he were still the old Li Jin, his body would have already melted. He felt internal flames spreading. The more he tried to suppress them, the more they raged, so he decided to face it head-on and forced control over it. After an intense burst of energy, he managed to stabilize everything. His core became denser, and his lightning martial art advanced to the 5th stage. The only problem was that his robe ended up completely burned. He realized that his body was still full of toxins, but he also felt that he was saying goodbye to the remnants of the old Li Jin. Now the real challenge was to absorb the milk of stone of pure void. Absorbing that elixir was like mixing water with sand to form a bowl, and then placing it inside a furnace. The bowl could crack under the heat, but if it endured, it would transform into a strong and refined ceramic. That was the spiritual energy of the milk of stone of pure void. Li Jin felt something overwhelming and powerful pressing against his entire body. He realized that it was a kind of test, and thought that perhaps he had been a bit too greedy by trying to absorb everything at once. Even so, he decided to face that energy head-on, because if he overcame it, he would become stronger than ever. 7 days later, Hua Aeon went to Li Jin's quarters, thinking that it had only been a week since he began circulating his energy, but it had been far too silent for too long, and that started to worry him. The twins greeted him and said that their lord had ordered that no one should approach. Hua Aeon said he understood, but questioned the reason for so much secrecy, and the answer came almost immediately. A massive explosion echoed inside the quarters. Li Jin came out with the room nearly charred and a strong smell spreading through the air. His eyes looked strange. Hua Aeon thought it might be impurities being expelled from his body, but soon realized it seemed worse. Like a deviation of ki, Li Jin collapsed face first onto the ground, and the twins rushed to help him. He looked exhausted, struggling to control something inside himself. Suddenly, he stood up saying he was hot and needed to cool off. He ordered no one to follow him. He leaped across the rooftops and went far away. Hua Aeon was confused, asking what kind of heat that was when the day was so cool. Li Jin kept running under the cloudy sky, feeling his entire body burning. His still immature body could not fully harmonize with that power. The energy roared and boiled inside him, out of control. If it continued like that, he could set everything on fire without meaning to. So he went as far as possible, toward isolated peaks in the mountains. He sat at the top of one of them while lightning tried to take over his body. He could barely endure it. He remembered his own death in his past life, and thought about the consequences of failing to absorb that energy. Then he decided to release everything at once. A massive bolt of lightning tore through the sky, and echoed across all the surrounding peaks. When the energy stabilized, Li Jin realized that he had reached the 8th stage of the white lightning art. Rain began to fall heavily over the city. He walked through the streets under the storm, imposing, drawing everyone's attention. People looked in awe, and even the women felt flustered seeing that nearly bare man passing by with such an overwhelming presence. Li Jin thought that he really needed to buy new clothes. He entered a shop and chose finely tailored clothes. When he went to pay, the merchant said it was not necessary. Ever since he defeated the Uyang clan and the men of the small divinity sect, there were almost no more bandits causing trouble in the streets. Thanks to that, the shop and the merchant's children were living in peace. It was just a way of showing gratitude. They even handed him an umbrella. Li Jin accepted it as a token of thanks and left. Observing how the people in that district were more at ease, he realized the peace he had helped create and felt that it was not a bad feeling. But that peace was soon interrupted. Someone was running away from a large group and ended up stopping in front of him. It was Chul Myungho, who said it had been a while and asked if he could borrow the umbrella because of the heavy rain. Li Jin replied that he was still the same as ever, a fox living a busy life. Meanwhile, in the Moyang clan at the Assembly of Emperors, important figures were gathered such as Doko Myung, the patriarch of the Doko clan, and Moyang Bin, the patriarch of the Moyang clan, and the organizer of that assembly. He commented that he had heard about the unfortunate incident involving Ouyang Hu, who challenged a member of the merchant group and lost his life in a duel. Also present was Ouyang Seng, the patriarch of the Ouyang clan and a member of the assembly. One of those present asked if Ho was not one of the most experienced martial masters of the clan. Another commented that he caused trouble with the merchant group before he died. Then a loud burst of laughter echoed through the hall. The one laughing was Namgung Wu, the patriarch of the Namgung clan and the head of the Assembly of Emperors, known as the Blade Emperor. He said that it was more entertaining than a comedian's performance, because an experienced martial master had been defeated by someone from a merchant group. At that moment, Li Jin Jin was rescuing his dear friend Myungho, the leader of the group chasing him ordered them to hand over the bastard right there and said they should not get involved in unnecessary matters and end up getting hurt. Lee Jin asked who exactly those people were, and Myungho replied that they were the troublemakers, currently the most notorious group in the underworld, subordinates of the Crimson Reaper Alliance, who were trying to take control of the central district. Myungho explained that he was involved with the auction and that after organizing the records sometime later, he realized those guys had robbed him. Lee Jin asked if his hands were better, and he replied that fortunately they were still usable. Then Lee Jin told the Reaper's men that they did not seem to be from that area and that he would explain the situation later when Myungho's hands were fully recovered. For now, they could leave. The troublemakers wanted to laugh at him, thinking he was just talking nonsense, but no one said a word. They felt something strange coming from Lee Jin, an oppressive pressure filled with power. Even so, the youngest recruit asked if he wanted to die, saying he had no idea who he was dealing with. When he raised his finger to point at Lee Jin's face, he was struck with a punch straight to the face and his skull was crushed. His body was thrown backward, and the others were left in shock. Lee Jin said he was very hungry, and that if they chose to fight, he would have to kill all of them, because he was in a hurry. Then he told them to leave while he was still being kind. They immediately agreed and ran away. After that, Myungho asked if he could at least buy him a bowl of noodles too, because that day he was not on the verge of death from being beaten, but from starving. Lee Jin told him to shut up. Myungho said he was unbelievably insane, and asked if he had only just realized that. After a bowl of noodles, Myungho said he finally felt alive and started teasing, asking if it was true that a branch of the beggar's sect had been established in Lee Jin's stomach because he ate like a bird. He said Lee Jin had changed too much, and that no one should change that fast. Even while saying all that, he ordered 4 more bowls from the shop owner. He asked about the twins, and Lee Jin replied that they were doing well in training. Myungho said they must be much stronger now, but that their appetite was absurd, like they were not even human. Lee Jin simply replied that he was rich, and Myungho said he had forgotten that detail. Then he asked how he could learn those martial arts, because he wanted to know if he could defeat the Crimson Reaper someday. He said that the leader of that group had many subordinates, and that when they fought, they looked like a swarm of bees. Lee Jin asked if he really wanted to learn. Myungho said he would be very grateful. Lee Jin then asked if he would follow exactly what he was taught. He said yes, of course. Without saying anything else, Lee Jin told him to bow right there on the ground. Myungho complained that it was embarrassing, but did it anyway. He said that if he was not taught after that, he would cause a scene in front of the Yuna gate. Then Lee Jin took the umbrella he had received and made a simple movement, saying that it was like that. Myungho asked if that was all, thinking it was a joke. The next instant, he was struck on the head with the umbrella and told to shut up. Lee Jin said the umbrella was a gift and he could not give it to him, but that he should repeat that movement 100,000 times and then come back. Myungho was shocked, asking if it was 100 or 100,000. Lee Jin replied that he talked too much, and that if he was not capable, he could drop the umbrella and leave. When Myungho asked if he was being serious, Lee Jin grabbed him by the collar and stared deeply into his eyes, asking if he really thought that learning a few childish movements would allow him to kill anyone. He said that if he had swung the umbrella 100,000 times before, he could have defeated at least half of those men with a wooden sword, but instead he had run away like a rat. Then he asked if he was a rat or a fox. Myungho commented that the conversation was getting strange, but Lee Jin sat down and said that he needed to understand his own place. The rain outside was already easing. Even so, Myungho left obediently with the umbrella in his hand, saying he would do as he was told. Lee Jin watched him and thought that he wanted to see whether that bastard would truly understand the situation. After all, earlier he had said that he would meet them, and a promise always had to be fulfilled. Meanwhile, some of the Crimson Reaper's subordinates were lying dead in front of him. The man had just woken up, and upon seeing the scene, demanded to know why they had let Myungho escape. Later, he received the full report, and asked if it was one of the fox's little friends who had stopped them, that son of a merchant group. One of the subordinates swore it was true, and explained that the young man was extremely strong and skilled. He added that rumors were already spreading, claiming that he was the strongest man in the region. But that was said right in front of the Reaper, who cast such a heavy glare that everyone fell silent immediately. He then ordered them to stay alert, because both of them had to die, the fox and the boy. Later, the twins were talking with Lee Jin Eon about the Reaper. One of them commented that the Reaper's temperament was terrible, and that he could tear opponents apart with his bare hands. Several sect leaders had already lost their lives to the Crimson Reaper. He had absorbed multiple factions in the Yukon region, and now everyone paid tribute to him. There were no exceptions, whether it was an escort service, a merchant group, or any other kind of business. He had even gone as far as extorting money from Myungho himself. Lee Jin-eon said that he had heard about it the previous day, that the Reaper had taken over the entire auction house. One of the twins confirmed it and said that he really was that kind of man. Hearing all of that, Lee Jin-eon realized that the situation was, at the very least, problematic. If his identity were discovered, the merchant group could end up being dragged into unnecessary trouble. Because of that, he decided it would be better to go there in person. Later in the shopping district of Yukon, at the House of Passion, Passion. One of the girls was extremely shaken after spending time in the Crimson Reaper's room. The owner of the place did not like the situation at all, but told them to take her somewhere else to rest. Shortly after, one of the attendants reported that a new guest had arrived on the first floor. The owner herself went to receive him and introduced herself as Jung Hua, the one in charge of the House of Passion, commenting that it was the first time she had seen that young master there. However, Li Jin-eon got straight to the point and asked if the Reaper was there. Jung Hua asked if he had arranged a meeting, but he made it clear that he only wanted to confirm whether the man was upstairs or not. Even hesitantly, she answered that yes, he was there. Then Li Jin-eon said he was going up and ordered that everyone be evacuated immediately. She tried to warn him that it would be difficult to get up there because the leader of the association had a complicated temperament, but that was not a problem for him. Li Jin-eon continued on his way, climbed the stairs and faced the guards without hesitation, throwing the first one down to the lower floor. The men tried to intimidate him, asking if he knew who he was dealing with, but he completely ignored them and simply asked where the Reaper was. More and more guards were mobilized. It really looked like a swarm of bees coming down the stairs to kill him all at once. He responded by gathering lightning in the palm of his hand and made it clear that he would find the Reaper after finishing all of them. The first was used as a weapon to knock down other guards. The second had his own weapon taken and his face crushed with it, being thrown through several floors. Even so, Li Jin-eon realized that he was still far from the right room and concluded that he would have to destroy everything along the way. With the flail he carried, he began smashing corridors, breaking down doors, and tearing through walls. After devastating a large part of the place, he concluded that if the Reaper was not there, then he must be on the next floor. Not long after, the guards protecting the Reaper's door were taken down with ease, and finally Li Jin-eon said that he had found him. The Reaper, annoyed by the commotion outside, asked if he had come to pay Myung-ho's debt in his place. Li Jin-eon replied that he was staying on an unnecessarily high floor. The path leading there was lined with blood, the blood of all the subordinates who had been killed. The Reaper asked if the climb had been difficult, and whether he had not enjoyed the welcome party. Li Jin-eon answered that it was no problem at all, because stepping over everyone on the way to the top was his specialty. The Reaper shot back, saying that his specialty was looking down on inferior beings. Hearing that, Li Jin-eon thought that was exactly why he liked dealing with people from the underworld, because beating up that kind of person was actually satisfying. But he noticed something even worse. Besides being evil by nature, the Reaper had killed the woman who had been with him in the room. The man claimed that he simply could not control his own strength. To Li Jin-eon, that was already far beyond any form of redemption. What he deserved was only death. The Reaper said he loved that look in the eyes of those who tried to kill him, because he found it amusing to see people filled with hatred and despair in front of him. Yet on the way there, he himself had torn apart everyone who dared to face him. Meanwhile, people were indeed being evacuated from the House of Passion, because everyone had already realized that things were about to go very wrong. In the middle of the chaos, someone asked one of the guards what was happening. The man replied that there was a lunatic destroying the entire pleasure house. Then, right in the middle of the evacuation, a figure appeared with a bread bag over his head and an umbrella in his hand. It was Myung-ho. Without wasting time, he struck a subordinate on the head with the umbrella and declared that he was there to crush every single one of those Reaper bastards. He swung the umbrella again as if it were a legendary weapon and began counting out loud, asking when he would reach 100,000. He said he had almost lost count, murmuring numbers in sequence: 2875, 2876, 2877. At that exact moment, a massive explosion erupted inside the House of Passion, and someone was thrown out of the building, flying through the air amid the debris. The first to be sent flying was the Crimson Reaper, but what really caught Myung-ho's attention was seeing Li Jin deliver such an absurd blow that it hurled the Reaper straight into the street. Even after that impact, the Reaper remained intact and found everything amusing, so he grabbed a flail from one of his men and decided things would get more exciting now. His attacks were wide and brutal arcs, heavy strikes that would certainly be fatal if they landed on Li Jin. But Li Jin, completely calm, stopped in the middle of the advance, grabbed the chains of the flail, and pulled the weapon toward himself. The Reaper was surprised, wondering how a mere leader of a merchant group could possess strength on the same level as his. Without hesitation, the Reaper let go of the flail and, using the momentum of his own movement, tried to knock Li Jin out with a direct punch, but Li Jin had already been analyzing every movement and had figured out what kind of technique he used. It was the Meteor Fist martial art, with clean and direct movements. The problem was that his opponent was the King of Fists. Li Jin not only blocked the attack, but also broke through the Reaper's guard and struck a powerful blow to his ribs. The Reaper responded that he also used fist techniques and that they would settle things properly. His body seemed to almost double in size as he resumed the Meteor Fist with even greater force. But strength and weight are not everything. Against Li Jin's refined technique, the Reaper's own weight was used against him, and he was thrown to the ground once again, unable to understand how he was still being overpowered. Li Jin then asked how it felt to look at the world from so low. If the Reaper had treated others with even a minimum of humanity, all that rage would not have built up inside him. The Reaper did not make things easy for himself either, so Li Jin decided to end end it once and for all, and initiated the second phase of the lightning. He began electrocuting the Reaper, increasing the voltage more and more while maintaining the discharge for a long time. Meanwhile, the Reaper's subordinates witnessed something terrifying above Li Jin's head. At the same time that he was electrocuting his enemy, he was creating a roar of lightning, a thunder shaped like a fist forming in the sky. When that thunder fist descended upon the area, the electric explosion was so intense that it reduced the Reaper to ashes and turned him into dust. That was the cleansing of the underworld. After that, Li Jin made it clear that no one there had the right to collect tribute from people just to exploit the weak. If they wanted to show strength, they should come to him first, because he would do exactly the same thing he had done to that bastard. Even so, the Reaper's men tried to convince themselves that he was just a man. In the streets, people wondered if the Crimson Reaper was truly dead, who that young man was, and why he had done that. Some even feared that new tributes would be demanded. That was when Myung-ho, with a paper bag over his head, showed that he was not that kind of person. He did not need money. He had more than enough. Then he pulled out his umbrella and continued counting. 2877, 2878, while helping to finish off what remained of the gang. Myung-ho knew that every person carries a burning ember inside their heart, but taking care of that flame is each person's responsibility. He remembered Li Jin's words, who once asked if he was a rat. The answer was clear. He was not a rat. He was a venomous fox. Later, at the main house of the Yuna group, Hua Aeon asked where his brother had been. Li Jin, completely covered in blood, replied that he had just gone out for a drink. Hua Aeon had gone to his room to ask something, but was intrigued by the amount of blood on his brother's face. Li Jin assured him it was not his. Hua Aeon already had an idea of what had happened, and commented that the elixirs seemed to be working very well. He had been thinking about preparing a gift of gratitude for the people who had sent the medicine to the Yuna group, especially because he needed to decide what to offer in return to the Taeho group. At that moment, Li Jin reflected that it had been the Taeho group that had given him the stone milk, something so valuable that even he could not measure its true worth. When Hua Aeon asked what they should offer in return, Li Jin explained that money or material goods would not be appropriate. What they had received was priceless, so the best way to repay it would be by forming a merchant alliance. Among those who sent the elixirs were large groups like Taeho, but there were also smaller ones, such as the West Wind Escort Establishment, which did not possess great strength. If they formed an alliance and offered protection to all, that would be enough as repayment. Hua Aeon questioned whether the plan was not too big for the moment. Li Jin replied that there was no need to start big. For now, they would include only the Taeho Merchant Group and the West Wind Escort. They had received something that no amount of money could repay, so they would return it in another way. When Hua Aeon asked how rules or fees would work, Li Jin decided to keep everything simple, just like in the old days. For now, they would not charge any fees at all. The purpose of that alliance would be only one: to protect the lives of merchants. It would also help if there were a fast communication system, something that would allow any problem to reach them and the guards quickly. Hua Aeon acknowledged that it was a very smart idea, but warned that if a situation arose that even escort warriors could not handle, that would be worrying. Li Jin knew that such things could happen. He had seen it with his own eyes. Even so, he made it clear that if something like that appeared, he would personally take care of it. The medicine he had received was something priceless, and had given him enormous strength, so the repayment needed to match it. Hua Aeon agreed and said he would begin planning the alliance, asking what it should be called. Li Jin thought about the Crimson Reaper, and said that the word alliance bothered him, so he decided the name would be Association of Great Merchants. Hua Aeon also remarked that since his return, his workload had only increased, but for merchants that was something positive, because the busier they were, the better business would be. At that moment, a guard came running in, warning that they were in trouble, because Lord Ouyang had personally arrived with his disciples. Later, in the main hall where they received guests, stood the patriarch of the Ouyang clan, Ouyang Seng, still consumed by the humiliation he had suffered in the previous meeting. Just remembering it made his blood boil. He told the disciples that they should face Li Jin from the Una group, because only a victory would restore the clan's pride. However, he made it clear that that brat would not be allowed to die peacefully. One of the disciples asked if they would use weapons, since their opponent fought with his fists, and that would not be a problem. Among them were Shin Sobaek, Ouyang Myung, and Ouyang Woon, the sons of the clan leader. Myung stated that he preferred to use his fists as well, but another declared that he would use a blade, questioning whether it was really necessary to be so careful against the son of a merchant. Even so, they remembered that he had defeated Ho, who despite being only a distant relative, was experienced in the martial world. The discussion ended when they decided it was time to meet this so-called Li Jin. Two twin servants approached with a teapot and informed them that the young master was waiting for them in the annex after the meal. Myung found it curious how large the servants were. Later, everyone went to the annex, where Li Jin was already prepared in the arena. As a good host, he welcomed them, and all the disciples introduced themselves. Ouyang Seng apologized for arriving without notice, but explained that he wanted to personally witness his strength. Li Jin replied that it was was not a problem and that they could choose the format of the duel. The rules were set simply: whoever left the ring, lost consciousness, or became unable to move would be defeated. Lee Jin accepted without difficulty and said they could begin. The first to step up was Myung, while Ouyang Sang waited to see the merchant's son beg for his life. But Myung felt something strange, because it did not seem like he was facing a mere merchant, but a warrior hardened by battle. He began to doubt that the victory over Ho had been luck. Lee Jin asked if he would not draw his sword, but Myung replied that he would fight however he preferred. In the blink of an eye, Lee Jin advanced, landed a direct punch to his face, and sent him flying into the wall on the other side of the arena. The other disciples were in shock, and Ouyang Sang, furious, crushed the cup he was holding. Lee Jin remarked that he should have drawn his sword and called for the next one. Woon asked them to take care of his older brother and stepped into the arena, saying that based on the skill shown, there was no need to hold back, and that he longed for a good fight. As soon as he drew his sword, he advanced with impressive speed. Lee Jin realized that he was bold and had good technique, a man well suited to the sword. Even so, he began blocking every strike with his bare hands, redirecting the flow of the blade with his palms and the backs of his hands, guiding each attack away from his body. Woon realized that his sword was being neutralized. That was when Lee Jin used the fifth phase of the white lightning, and the roar of lightning, a massive fist made of thunder, descended and struck Woon down as well. Shin So-baek remarked that even the third young master had been defeated with ease. Myung, already injured, questioned whether they should stop there, because the defeat of all three would cause great chaos. Even so, Shin did not back down. He jumped into the arena and stated that, even acknowledging Lee Jin's martial excellence, as a practitioner of palm techniques he could not miss that opportunity. He asked if he could duel him. Lee Jin thought that there was finally someone decent there and accepted. In the first moments, the fight remained balanced between strength and technique. Shin then provoked him, asking if he only knew how to block, and unleashed the crushing gale palm, a strike he believed was impossible to block. In fact, Lee Jin did not try to block the attack. He simply dodged and commented that Shin's movements were not bad, but they were too flashy. In the middle of the advancing palm storm, he grabbed Shin's leg, twisted it with nothing but the strength of his fingers, and said it had been a good duel, young Master Shin. Then he slammed his face against the arena floor and ended the fight. Myung realized that, in the end, all of them had lost, and that there was nothing good about that situation. Lee Jin then turned to the leader of the Ouyang and asked if the duels were over, but Lord Ouyang clearly did not seem satisfied. Sang reflected that the young master of a merchant group had defeated all of them, which proved that he was no ordinary man. Even if they brought another member of the Ouyang clan, it still would not be enough. If that continued, not only would the pride of the governing association be wounded, but they would also become a laughingstock. That was when Sang suggested that Lee Jin go for a walk. Later, as they walked through the city, he commented that it was a very peaceful place, and that the honorable group must have many suppliers there. Without beating around the bush, he asked why Lee Jin did not join the governing association, not as a representative of the entire group, but as an individual martial artist. If he accepted, the association would protect the honorable group. The governing association was led by the four great clans: Doko, Zemen, Namgung, and Moyang. Lee Jin asked if those were not the same ones who had left the Murim alliance for insisting on placing the 9 great sects at the center. Sang replied that it was not a problem, and preferred to call it a friendly competition with the Murim alliance. Lee Jin knew that the Ouyang had recently joined the association, and realized that Sang was trying to keep up appearances. He also commented that men under Ouyang Hu were spreading rumors about him, damaging his reputation. Therefore, the proposal to join the association would be a way to restore his honor, something that did not seem like a difficult request. Lee Jin asked what would happen if he refused. Sang questioned why he would do that, since, as the son of merchants, he should know how to calculate losses and gains, but Lee Jin responded by asking what he would actually do in the association. He did not lack money, and yet they were only offering him the position of a common martial artist. If they were not there to fight, then the conversation ended there. He stated that the walk had been neither good nor productive. Sang then gave what he called a final chance, and asked if young Master Jin wanted the merchant group to be annihilated. With the strength of the Ouyang clan, they could spare only him and mark him as a public enemy of the martial world. He asked if he truly believed he could stop that, because even if he was strong, he would not be able to face the entire governing association. Lee Jin's response was immediate. He hurled the old man against a wall and grabbed him by the neck, saying that was enough. He asked if he had ever considered the possibility of simply killing him right there and then, wiping out the entire clan afterward. He could even place all the blame on the eldest son. He asked if he wanted to test that. Sang replied that, among all the vile and wicked things he had ever heard heard. Those words were the most unforgivable, typical of a man without education, limits, or shame. He said he should keep those words until he could prove his strength. Suddenly, a poisonous mist spread through the street. Sang thought that was the strike of the toad poison palm, a technique he had trained to defeat the 4 great leaders. There was no way that brat could resist it, but Li Jin summoned lightning and burned away the poison around him. Then he slammed Sang to the ground and electrocuted him. After that, he let him go, saying he was much weaker than expected. However, he acknowledged that if he killed him there, he would be seen as a public enemy, and asked if he understood what would happen with the association coming after him. Sang stated that in that condition, he would lose in the end. Li Jin replied that it would not be like that, because he would make sure Sang regretted every word and every action for the rest of his life. Later, the members of the Ouyang clan were being treated by Yuna's own people at the main house. That was when Li Jin returned, holding their patriarch by the hair, and threw the old man into the middle of the courtyard. Myung asked what he was doing, young Master Jin, but was told to stay quiet or end up like Sang. Woon asked if his father was still alive, and Li Jin replied that for now, he was still breathing. Then he ordered Mok In-sep to prepare the carriage outside. Woon asked if he had a valid reason to explain all that. Li Jin answered that he had been threatened, that they said if he did not cooperate, the Yuna merchant group would be annihilated, and the blame would fall on him. The disciples were shocked by that revelation. Li Jin then stated that he would go to the governing association to officially report the matter, and asked for some guards to accompany him as witnesses. Shin asked if he knew where the association was, since there was no official headquarters. The properties of the patriarchs of the 4 great clans served as meeting places, and the Moyang clan residence was the closest. Li Jin replied that he would go there. He ordered the guards and the twins to stay alert to ensure those men did not try anything foolish. Li Jin would organize the matters of the day and report everything to the Murim alliance, while he headed to the Moyang clan. Later, already on the way, inside the carriage were some guards, Li Jin and Sang, who was unconscious and tied up. When Sang woke up, he asked where they were going. Li Jin answered that they were heading to the Moyang clan estate. Sang asked for some water, but one of the guards remarked that he doubted the young master would allow it. Li Jin mocked him, saying that the patriarch was personally asking for water, and yet they were being cold, asking whether they were Ouyang clan warriors or assassins. At that very moment, he incinerated the guard inside the carriage, turning the man into a charred corpse. Then he asked the other if they were assassins or guards. The man admitted they were assassins, belonging to the group known as the Silver and Gold Assassins, divided into gold and silver ranks, and that he was a silver rank. Li Jin then asked Sang how much he had paid them. He said that parts of his body were still intact, and that it would be better to answer. Sang revealed that he paid 800 myung per head. Li Jin commented that it was above the usual price, and that the amount likely included Sang's own life. He explained that the leader of the assassins had sold him to Ouyang Sang, and that after wiping out the Ouyang group, he himself would be eliminated to clean up the traces. It was easier to kill assassins than deal with the clan's contempt for dirty actions. Sang remained silent, because he knew it was true. Li Jin said that this was typical of the orthodox faction, pure on the surface and rotten underneath. If Sang's life was worth only 800 myung, then it was far too cheap. He should have trained more so he would not be sold for so little. He declared that assassins who accept money in exchange for their own lives do not deserve to be called people. Inside that carriage, there was a severely injured man, a corpse, and 3 assassins outside, a perfect group for a ride. When they finally arrived at the Moyang clan estate, everyone was shocked to see the Ouyang patriarch tied up and being dragged by Li Jin. Moyang Bin, patriarch of the Moyang clan, asked why Ouyang was there and what had happened to his neck. He also said he had never seen Li Jin before. When he introduced himself, Moyang Bin was surprised, since not long ago, the patriarch had been Moyang Chu. He then asked why the eldest son of the honorable merchant group had come there dragging a patriarch like a criminal. Li Jin explained the whole story and stated that those men had been hired by Sang. A subordinate of Moyang Bin commented that threatening a merchant group was a serious matter, and that if that spread, the alliance would laugh at them. Moyang Bin asked what Li Jin's true intention was, whether he feared retaliation, and therefore came to reveal the truth. Li Jin responded by asking what he would have done in that situation. Moyang Bin reflected that if someone threatened to wipe out his clan and turn him into a criminal, he would have killed that person. But if that person were Sang, then the eyes of the Ouyang clan and all of Murim would fall on him. Sang, still injured, declared that if he had not been mocked at the association, he would never have lost to a boy from a merchant group. He said that the humiliation he suffered in front of the other patriarchs led him to that mistake. He tried to shift part of the blame onto them. Moyang Bin ended it with a blow that knocked Sang unconscious. He declared that any disgrace that came from that point on would be a shame for him as a patriarch. Then he ordered the other 3 assassins to be taken away and imprisoned as well. Moyang Bin apologized to Master Li Jin, saying that their hospitality had been disgraceful and that the governing association should have no connection with parasites like those. Then he asked if he was already leaving or if he could at least share a meal with them. Li Jin replied that a good meal would make the trip worthwhile. Later, while they were eating together, Moyang Bin still seemed impressed at the thought that the eldest son of a merchant group had defeated everyone from the Ouyang clan. clan. He commented that it had all happened so suddenly, and asked if Li Jin had already considered how the matter would be resolved. He explained that he could not kill Sang personally, but he would handle the situation in a reasonable way. He planned to hand him over to the Murim alliance, letting the resentment against the Uyang fall upon the clan itself. The governing association would suffer some damage, but honor came before anything else. He believed the other patriarchs would agree. Li Jin said it was a good plan, but then asked a question that might have been out of place. He asked if Moyong Chu had gone through the hand-washing ceremony at the Golden Basin. Moyong Bin replied that news in Jianghu was slow and revealed that his father had been missing for a year. Li Jin was surprised and asked what he meant by missing. Moyong Bin explained that they had sent members of the main clan to search for him, but he remained gone, living like a rebellious son. Li Jin thought that a year ago was exactly when he had come to that world. That meant that not only had he died before, but perhaps Moyong Chu had as well. He asked if there were rumors that his father had come into conflict with the demonic faction. Moyong Bin replied that the faction had been quiet for more than 20 years, and that if it had risen again, it would not remain so silent. Besides, it would be strange for them to target his father specifically. Li Jin remembered that he also had not had much contact with his enemies in the past. They had simply appeared and ambushed him. He then asked if his father was strong enough to defeat several swordsmen at once. Moyong Bin replied that it would be a brutal fight, but he would not fall easily. Li Jin then questioned whether the bodies of those men could be resistant to blades. He began to recall his past life. Some enemies had survived even after being struck by the lightning breath in its 9th phase. No one like the Crimson Reaper would withstand the 8th phase. Considering the level he had at that time, it was not natural for ordinary soldiers to show such resilience. They should have been at least in the realm of blade-resistant bodies or beyond. If men like that, together with that strange sorceress of the demonic faction, joined forces, only beings beyond the heavens could face them. Even if a son searched for his father, he might not find traces of the demonic faction. Still, he wondered why they were moving only now and in secret. They must be after something. Meanwhile, that same sorceress informed the Sword Demon that they had finally found the Sword King. The demon ordered them to gather all their men, because it was time to hunt the king. Back in the conversation, Li Jin asked if Moyong Bin could talk about the current situation of the great martial masters. He replied that the Blade Emperor was in good health. At one point, Ouyang Seng shouted, accusing the others of mocking him, but in truth it was the Blade Emperor who was laughing loudly at the situation. The others only showed discomfort, because the atmosphere was tense. It was understandable that the Ouyang Patriarch was angry, but the Blade Emperor was not a man who cared about others' opinions. He simply ignored those who disliked him. As for the Sword God, they had heard that he had entered secluded training about 6 months ago. The Sword Emperor, on the other hand, had no fixed residence and wandered the world, so it was impossible to know his whereabouts. Moyong Bin commented that he had even reported the disappearance of Li Jin's father, but there had been no response. The Sword King was semi-retired, dedicated to training his disciples. That left the King of Fists. They said he had a fierce temperament, so difficult that even Moyong Bin's father had trouble dealing with him. There were no recent reports about his whereabouts. Perhaps he was wandering the world in search of disciples or crushing some underworld sect. He was not the type to make friends easily. Li Jin asked what made the personality of the King of Fists so difficult to approach. Moyong Bin explained that he often beat junior disciples from orthodox factions when he found them arrogant, punished veterans of the demonic faction if they displeased him, and killed any member of a non-orthodox faction he encountered. Even young masters of prestigious clans had been slapped by him. Even so, the King of Fists was known for being fair and having firm principles. He challenged veterans to duels without hesitation, and gave the impression of being simply a martial artist at his core. Bin, based on what he had heard from his father, commented that the King of Fists had always lived a solitary life. Li Jin said that maybe he had not been that alone, but quickly brushed it off and simply said that the food was good. Bin then asked if he was planning to return to the merchant group and, if he had no urgent duties, suggested that they personally visit the Murim alliance together. The next day, already at the Moyong clan estate, Bin explained to Li Jin that, with a direct testimony, they could shape the case however they wanted. Coincidentally, the Moyong clan delegation was returning from a nearby mission, so it would be convenient to travel together. He introduced Baek Hangkung from the Murim alliance, and informed that, regarding Sang, he would be escorted. The two of them would go ahead using their mobility arts. Before leaving, Li Jin made one more request. While he was away, he wanted them to take care of the Yuna group. Bin replied that he did not need to worry, since the Moyong martial artists should have already arrived to escort the merchant group. Li Jin thanked the goodwill of the patriarch, and said he would not forget it. He also mentioned that the assassins who had appeared earlier seemed to belong to an organization called Silver and Gold Assassins, and asked the Ruler Association to investigate. If they discovered their headquarters, he would lend his strength. Bin said that it would not be that difficult to resolve. Li Jin then admitted that he had come prepared for a full confrontation against the Moyong clan, but since the patriarch had assessed the situation wisely, he could now leave in peace. He thanked Lord Bin once again, who thought to himself that a merchant group heir who prepared for battle was truly an interesting man. 4 days later, they finally reached their destination. Hankyung thought that the man was just as taciturn as he was. Alliance. During several days of travel, they had exchanged almost nothing beyond simple words to organize stops, rest, and departure. In the middle of the streets, Hankyung ended up bumping into a man with a very distinctive scar and immediately realized that he was a vicious bandit, a public enemy wanted in the Murim. He informed Lee Jin that he would take a moment to kill or capture that man. Lee Jin asked if he was a member of a non-orthodox faction, and he confirmed, saying that he was dangerous. Hankyung moved across the rooftops, but when the bandit realized he was being followed, he tried to flee. As he ran, Hankyung began to suspect that it was too noisy. Lately, many outcasts from non-orthodox factions had been dissatisfied with the Murim Alliance, as they continued to be captured and killed. For one of them to walk so openly through the streets without a mask, it could only be a trap. When he finally caught up with the bandit, he was surrounded by two other men. From their missing arms, Hankyung recognized that they seemed to be the ones who had lost to the Alliance leader. He questioned whether they were still alive, and criticized the fact that they were wasting time with that kind of trap, instead of challenging the leader again. Now they were using wanted criminals as bait. The two men mocked him, saying that their pastime was cutting off arms for the Alliance leader, and that they also enjoyed beheading people. At that moment, Lee Jin was already behind them, commenting that it was a curious pastime. Hankyung had not even noticed when he arrived. Lee Jin said that he also had an interesting pastime, and that he would show it now. Shortly after, the three men were already being beaten on the ground. Meanwhile, at the main house of Yuna, Myungho caused a commotion upon discovering that Lee Jin had gone to the Murim Alliance. He was being held back by the guards sent by the Moyong clan, who claimed that it would be better for him to personally witness the incident at the Uyong clan, so he had departed immediately. Hwa ordered them to release the poor Myungho, and explained the situation. Even so, Myungho was outraged, remembering that he had made a promise, and had even been forced to swing that umbrella 100,000 times, although he found it embarrassing to mention it. In a burst of anger, he went as far as lowering his pants in front of the gate, which made Hwa and the guards immediately shut the gates. He shouted, asking if Lee Jin had really run off to the Murim Alliance, and said he was not an idiot to be treated like that. He declared that he was the poison fox, and that at this point, he would simply storm the Murim Alliance without thinking twice. Without waiting any longer, he ran toward the Murim Alliance, swinging the umbrella while counting each movement, until he reached 101,203 times. When Lee Jin appeared, the vicious bandit provoked him, asking who was going to beat whom there and called him a mutt. Then he told Hankyung that, since he had managed to lure him there, he would take his leave because he was busy. Lee Jin shot back by asking if he was leaving to relieve himself, or if he was that obscene swordsman, and even added mockingly that a healthy man could do that as well. Then he asked Hankyung if it was allowed to kill a wanted man. Hankyung confirmed that it was, explaining that a public enemy officially registered by the Murim Alliance could be executed on the spot. Lee Jin found that interesting, tightened the wraps around his arms, and smiled. Hankyung realized that it was the first time he had seen that man smile in 3 days of travel. Lee Jin commented that he loved executions, and at that moment the vicious bandit and his subordinates rushed forward at the same time, throwing small daggers and attacking with swords. Lee Jin easily dodged and returned the daggers straight into the heads of the subordinates. Then he asked the bandit what he had done to become a wanted man. The perverse man replied that he had only trained a part of his body that Lee Jin would never be able to use. He lunged forward with palm techniques wrapped in energy, but Lee Jin responded with a punch that broke the bandit's hand. Realizing he had no chance of winning, the man surrendered and said he would personally go to the Murim Alliance to accept his punishment, only asking that they not touch his parts. Lee Jin asked why he was surrendering now, and the perverse man explained that it would settle the case, and even offered information about another wanted man that could be more useful. Before he could continue, Lee Jin blew his head apart with the next punch, saying that he was not part of the Murim Alliance, and therefore did not need to accept any surrender. After massacring the three, Lee Jin fell silent and questioned whether they should have taken the man to the Murim Alliance. Hankyung replied that it was better that he had died and that there was no reason to worry. Soon after, Lee Jin asked if they were not going to eat something, because he was starving. Hankyung agreed. Later, in a busy restaurant, Hankyung commented that the young master had great experience. After watching the earlier fight, his doubts had been cleared. When he heard that the heir of a merchant group had defeated the head of the Uyang clan, he had not believed it, especially because his name was not known. However, after seeing Lee Jin's skill, he began to believe that he truly had that level. He said he would do his best to prove his strength, and that he did not need to worry about witnesses. Lee Jin found it curious how he had suddenly become talkative. Then Hankyung asked if he would consider joining the Murim Alliance. He explained that the pay was not high and the work was hard, but only skill mattered there. According to the leader, individual ability was worth more than background or origin. With Lee Jin's talent, he could grow a lot. He also mentioned that he seemed seemed to have ties with the ruler association, but that the Murim alliance was different. The association offered better pay and easier jobs, but it was built on the influence of the great clans. Outsiders barely had a chance, as the clans only favored their own. Those from outside were treated as mercenaries chasing money, and in real battles they fled like cornered rats. Li Jin remembered Mo Yongbin's words, and commented that not every ruler association was like that. At that moment, someone on the upper floor of the restaurant said he was right, and stated that it was not the Murim alliance that defamed others, but rather that they were always speaking badly of others. He also said that calling the ruler association cornered rats was an exaggeration. Han Kyung stood up, apologized, and asked the man's name. He replied that he was Autumn Wind, and returned to talking with the woman accompanying him. Even so, Han Kyung remained standing. Li Jin commented that he had already apologized and did not need to worry so much, but took the opportunity to ask if the man had come because of Seng, since he seemed to be part of the ruler association. Han Kyung replied that he did not know him, but if they were from the association, they were probably there because of the Dragon Phoenix tournament. He asked whether Li Jin had no interest in the competition, since he was young, skilled, and qualified in every aspect. It was a great tournament watched by all of Murim, and a valuable experience. Li Jin answered that he was not interested, because fame is not built that way. It appears naturally the stronger someone becomes. Then Han Kyung commented that the leader had promised a high-grade elixir to the winner. Upon hearing that, Li Jin said that in that case he would participate. Han Kyung even choked on his water and apologized, surprised by the sudden change. Li Jin replied that he was not offended and that everyone makes mistakes, but that he should have mentioned the elixir from the beginning. As they were leaving, Han Kyung said they were close to reaching the Murim alliance, but right in front of the gate he ran into the same man again, Autumn Wind. The man mocked him, asking if he was dragging his feet at the entrance, and sarcastically said that before it was called a slanderous alliance, and now it looked more like a slow alliance. Han Kyung said nothing, but thought that the man was truly resentful. Autumn Wind then looked at Li Jin and asked why he was not running like the wind itself from there. It was clear he was bothered. Soon the two of them shot forward at high speed, raising so much dust that people at the restaurant later commented that it seemed intentional. Autumn Wind even told a disciple to follow with the other participants more slowly, as he wanted to show those two what true mobility techniques were. Thus, a real race began. After some time, they were practically side by side, but Li Jin gave a final burst and reached the courtyard of the Murim alliance first. Han Kyung noticed that Autumn Wind was right behind. The man stretched out his arm trying to touch first, but ended up crashing onto the ground. Even while fallen, he asked who had won, claiming he had placed his finger first. Autumn Wind argued back, asking if he was blind, since it was obvious that he had been the winner. At that moment, someone appeared questioning the point of that dispute. In the end, the clear winner was the young master Li Jin. The one who spoke was the leader of the Murim alliance himself, Yu Jung-hung, who praised Han Kyung's work. That Autumn Wind finally introduced himself as Hua Eunwol, and also greeted the leader. Yu Jung-hung asked if that was the young master of the Unha merchant group. Hua Eunwol grew curious whether he was really the man who had defeated the patriarch of the Uyang clan. Li Jin formally introduced himself as Li Jinun of the Unha merchant group. The leader then wished Hua Eunwol good luck in the Dragon Phoenix tournament, and said he would accompany the two to the main hall. Before leaving, Hua Eunwol commented that they would meet again at the tournament, and departed. On the way, Yu Jung-hung commented to Han Kyung that this time his mobility art had fallen behind. Han Kyung replied that it was impossible, as he thought they had arrived almost together. The leader explained that young Master Hua had not gone all out, since he was preparing for the tournament and wanted to conserve energy. He did not know what had happened, but it seemed that Han Kyung had run alongside him without wanting to fall behind. Han Kyung asked if the young master knew this, and the leader said yes, but advised him not to feel offended. Those about to compete in a martial tournament usually hide their true strength. Later, in the grand main hall of the Murim alliance, Yu Jung-hong said that everyone had already left and that now only the young master of the merchant group remained. As for the matter of Seng Ouyang, he would decide after confirming Li Jin's martial ability. Thus, only the two of them remained in the wide and silent hall. The leader asked him to come closer without fear. Li Jin thought that it had been a long time since they had been this close. Before him stood Yu Jung-hung, the man who had lost only to the three gods, and who had commanded all the orthodox sects in the final battle against the demonic faction, the so-called Battle of the Five Tombs. It was he who had even brought a saint to the front lines, and dragged the three gods into the war. Without a doubt, someone worthy of respect. The leader observed that the young man had a troubled expression. He said that in Jianghu, he encountered many youths like him, but he preferred those who acted according to their age, as it made him more comfortable. He also commented that his face looked younger when he smiled, but he was curious. He directly asked if he was the successor of the King of Fists, and how many techniques he had learned from the master. Li Jin asked how he had figured it out so quickly. Yu Jung-hong explained that he used fist techniques and controlled lightning. In the history of Murim, the main factions that mastered lightning were the Jimen clan, the Namgung school, the Baekli clan, and the Enlightenment sect. Jimen was known for the sword, Namgung for Taoist arts, and Baekli had abandoned the path after repeated failures. That left only the Enlightenment man sect, linked to the King of Fists, although calling it a sect was strange, since it always depended on a single successor. Hearing that, Li Jin thought that, as expected from the leader, he had understood everything. He confirmed that it was true. He was the successor of the King of Fists. Yu Junghong said that fate had truly brought the two of them together there. Those who master lightning arts always carry a dominating aura, even in their gaze. His energy reminded him a lot of that man. Because of that, he had no special memory of friendship with the King of Fists. He was like a solitary lightning bolt, someone who wanted to shatter the heavens alone, not the type of person who easily formed bonds. But before ending the conversation, Yu Junghong asked how his master was doing, since he had not received any news for some time. Li Jin replied that he was like the former patriarch of the Moyang, with no contact at all with the outside world. The leader commented that the King of Fists rarely sent news, but he did not know he had disappeared. He said he would make sure to pass this information to the three gods and the saint. He explained that great masters of Murim were disappearing one after another, and suspected that the demonic faction had started some new movement. If they reappeared, there would be no choice but to fight again, just like last time. Then he commented that perhaps the young man did not know about it, since everything had happened before he was born. Li Jin asked if he was talking about the Battle of the Five Tombs, and the leader confirmed it, but added that there had been another battle after that. The three gods had faced a single grand master of the demonic faction. Yu Junghong confessed that he would never forget the despair he witnessed that day. Whenever he heard that the sword god was still training, he remembered that battle. Even though it was a fight that would decide the fate of the war between the orthodox and the demonic, the three gods had to face a single man. It was a secret he shared only with members of the alliance, and also the reason why they always sought to grow stronger. If that grand master had left descendants, they would probably be around Li Jin's age. Because of that, he asked him to become stronger, in a selfish and overwhelming way. As for Sung, he said he did not need to worry. Being the successor of the King of Fists, there was no reason to doubt his word. Sung would remain imprisoned until they decided what to do. Then he asked if he would participate in the tournament, and told him to get some rest. Li Jin thanked him and left. As he walked, he kept thinking about the leader's words. The peak of the demonic faction had no name, and no one knew if that man had truly died. They had cut his body repeatedly, burned it, gathered the ashes and scattered them across Mount Huangshan, Mount Wuyi, Mount Tai, Mount Lu, and Mount Ma. Even so, the fear remained. If disaster were to happen again because of that, whether he was a descendant or not, the leader would make sure that next time, not even ashes would remain. At that moment, the image of Yu Junghong alone in the vast hall no longer seemed like just that of a respectable senior of Jianghu. It was that of a monster shaped by time. Perhaps the true opposite of the demonic faction was not the orthodox one, but another monster. Li Jin thought that, in a way, Jianghu, created by the mutual slaughter between orthodox and demonic, was not very different from the Asura kingdom. At that moment, Hank Hyung appeared, asking if it had been a good conversation. He explained that it might be uncomfortable for him to stay inside the alliance, so they had prepared lodging outside. He guided Li Jin there. The place looked simple from the outside, but the room was spacious and bright, perfect for waking up early. When they opened the door, they realized someone was already inside. Hank Hyung asked who it was, but Li Jin had already recognized him. It was Myung-ho, with both feet on the table, saying that the place was quite nice and very spacious. He complained that he had barely slept trying to get there. Li Jin asked how he had found the room, and Myung-ho replied that he went knocking from door to door, asking for a room under his name. He said it was not difficult. Then he tossed the umbrella back, stating that he had gone past 10,000 times. He said he was a man who kept his word. To ask for the next step, he had crossed mountains on horseback and traveled by ship. Now the poison fox had finally arrived and wanted to know why he was just standing there. He told him to say what needed to be done right away. Li Jin asked Hank Hyung if there was a place nearby where he could train. He replied that he knew a good spot. The next morning, they took both of them to a huge and secluded valley, often used by members of the alliance for training. Myung-ho commented that it was very spacious. Li Jin thanked him. After Hank Hyung left, Myung-ho asked if he was also going to train. He said that Li Jin was already strong, since he had fired lightning before. Li Jin replied that he could not rely only on the white lightning art. His internal energy had deepened, so he planned to practice the divine art of the phantom flower. Myung-ho got confused and said he did not understand anything. Li Jin told him to forget it, because he would not understand anyway. Offended, Myung-ho asked if he was looking down on him. Li Jin sighed and said he would explain just once, so he should pay attention. He stepped onto the water of the valley, releasing lightning that spread across the surface. He explained that the 10 phases white lightning art focused on powerful offensive techniques, but attacks alone were not enough to defeat true martial masters. Even the strongest needed to know how to counterattack, take advantage, and redirect the enemy's force. The divine art of the phantom flower was a martial art specialized exactly in those principles of using the opponent's strength, redirecting it, and counter-attacking. Myung-ho asked if that meant taking advantage of the enemy's own technique. Lee Jin explained that the supreme secret of the Phantom Flower was the so-called Phantom Reach, a technique that allowed moving objects at a distance without touching them, distorting the path of the enemy's weapon, or even disarming them. For someone who mainly fought in close combat like him, that art was essential. Myung-ho said that sounded like a thief's trick. At that very moment, a lightning bolt struck his head and sent him flying out of the valley. Lee Jin told him not to try to understand with that insect brain of his. Even so, he noticed that Myung-ho was beginning to grasp something. Those countless strikes he had thrown into the air were not useless. He then asked if he felt like he had achieved anything. Myung-ho said he felt nothing, only that his arms had gotten thicker. He complained that Lee Jin should have taught a truly useful technique from the start. Lee Jin himself thought that he had given him a chance because he saw potential, but not everyone has the time or the will to seize an opportunity. With that in mind, he decided to make things even harder. He explained that among the 100,000 strikes Myung-ho had thrown, only one truly had value. Then he repeated that same umbrella strike toward him and said that if he ever wanted to block, parry, or counterattack someone, he would have to find the most efficient trajectory among 100,000 possibilities. If he could not, he would die. Among 100,000 strikes, only one is the most efficient. Among 200,000 cuts, only one is the most precise. Among 300,000 thrusts, only one is the fastest and sharpest. The true path is to extract these movements, refine them, connect them, and reorganize them until forming a complete sequence. That is what is called a basic form. After that, the masters of each sect study, modify, and polish these sequences through constant repetition until they reach what is called perfect swordsmanship. But learning swordsmanship is not the end. Applying all of that in real combat is something completely different. Myung-ho almost fell back from so much information and said that he finally understood. He commented that now he understood why martial artists always end up losing their minds, because they are all crazy. Lee Jin asked if he really thought there was no one in Jianghu crazier than him. He said he was wrong. Myung-ho replied that maybe there was. Then Lee Jin told him not to worry, because he had never intended to teach him a complicated sword art. Myung-ho asked why not, since that would not make him stronger. Lee Jin explained that there were countless martial artists who trained the techniques of great sects in a harsh and repetitive way, but joining a famous sect, learning its arts, and training under a great master was not everything. Becoming strong was something much deeper than that. In the end, it all depended on a single thing: the way each person lived their own life. Alliance leader Jung Hong and Han Kyung were watching that whole exchange from a distance. Han Kyung apologized to the leader, saying he had not realized that he was planning to train and ended up bringing them there. Jung Hong replied that it was fine, that he was just enjoying the scene because he found it entertaining to watch. Meanwhile, Lee Jin explained that when it comes to the greatest sword arts in the entire history of Jiangguo, 9 out of 10 people would mention the 9 strikes of the Doko sword. Myung-ho said he had heard of it before and that, when he was a child, he used to swing a stick around while shouting the name of the technique everywhere. Lee Jin continued, saying that even so, there was a sword art capable of surpassing even the 9 strikes. It was the art of Jin So-han, the man known for being obsessed with swords. He did not belong to any sect, but if someone truly wanted to understand Jiangguo, they first needed to know his story. Jin So-han came from a troupe of traveling performers and grew up learning the sword dance. Myung-ho asked if it was that seductive dance where one cuts people's clothes without injuring them. Lee Jin confirmed that it was exactly that. Jin So-han used to dance with the older women who raised him. He practiced that dance for 10 whole years, always being careful not to harm those who took him in. He was an orphan in the world, a man who trained with the sword not to kill but to avoid cutting people. When he finally learned to wield a sword meant for killing, his enlightenment came all at once. That was how he surpassed even the 9 strikes of the Dako sword and created the greatest sword art of all. Myung-ho commented that it was a beautiful story, but Lee Jin explained that it was not the sword dance itself that made his art so powerful. The brilliance of a technique or the prestige of a great sect meant nothing. What truly mattered was that he had lived sincerely. A person's strength depended on the kind of life they chose to live. Then he asked whether Myung-ho wanted to be a rat or a fox. Myung-ho said he had summed it up well, and asked him to show the next step. Lee Jin asked if he would regret it, and he answered that he never would. Then Lee Jin showed the next 2 movements he should practice. Myung-ho declared that this time he would swing the sword 1,000,000 times. From afar, Jung Hong commented that it was the tri-sword technique, and that the young master Lee Jin was truly exceptional. He could not even remember the last time he had seen someone train so calmly. After so many years in the Murim alliance, Jung Hong had lost all his friends, who had disappeared one by one, and most of his subordinates had also been gone for a long time. Since he had enjoyed that spectacle, he decided he would prepare a gift for those boys. Later, the two continued training and meditating. While Myung-ho kept swinging the umbrella without stopping, Lee Jin made stones levitate as if it were the simplest thing in the world, which almost seemed unfair. After some time, Jung Hong appeared to talk with them a bit more. He said he had already seen them training several times and that they had been very diligent in the past few days. Myung-ho thought that he was the true leader of the alliance, and wondered how Lee Jin knew someone of that level. He respectfully introduced himself as Chul Myung-ho. Jung-hung asked if the scar on his cheek was a sword wound. He replied that it was from a dagger. The leader asked if it had been during a duel or training. Myung-ho explained that he worked managing a gambling den and got into a fight with a man who did not want to pay his debts and ended up getting stabbed. He realized he might have said too much and thought he should have made up something more respectable, like a duel, but at least he had been honest. Jung-hung simply said he understood. The leader then commented that he also carried a scar that would never disappear, showing the mark on his own arm. He said that his father managed a brewery and supplied liquor to taverns, often carrying the barrels himself. One day, he saw his father being beaten by drunk men inside a tavern. At that time, he was not yet skilled with the sword. All he could do was grab a club and swing it from side to side. The drunk men were not strong, and he managed to knock them all down without killing anyone. Even so, his father came to him with a shocked expression and tried to stop the bleeding on his arm, a wound he had not even realized was there. Then his father put him on his back and ran out of there, taking his son somewhere he could be treated. In the middle of the rush, he realized that his own father was also badly injured, yet he only cared about his son. Maybe that was why that scar never disappeared. It was a memory he carried not only on his skin, but in his life. Jung Hong commented that everyone who sets foot in Jeonggu carries their own story. Do they not, boy? At that moment, the rain stopped and the sun began to appear through the clouds. He then asked if that completely battered umbrella was really Chul Myung-ho's weapon. The boy replied that he had borrowed it from Lee Jin. The leader said that in that case he could take his now and see what he thought. When Myung-ho held the new umbrella, he almost lost his balance from how heavy it was. Jung-hong explained that it was an umbrella made of black iron, a gift from Klemoyong to the Murim alliance. Its weight and durability made it an excellent weapon. He could swing it 1,000,000 times and it would not break. Myung-ho thanked him, but said he did not know if he deserved it. The leader asked if he regretted living such a miserable life. He thought for a moment and answered that yes, he did regret it. Jung-hong said that if he could correct the mistakes of the past and live properly from now on, that would already make him a good man. He did not need to torment himself over what had already happened. He commented that it was tiring to spend so much time talking with an old man and said he would take his leave. Before going, he told Lee Jin that he was looking forward to seeing him at the tournament. When he left, Lee Jin said it was already time for lunch. Myung-ho told him he could go ahead, as he would train a little longer. He was happy. The leader of the alliance had given him a real weapon. As he walked away, Lee Jin wondered whether his friend was laughing or crying. A few days later, on the eve of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, a man stood at the top of the arena explaining that, since the tournament had many participants, many of them became excited just waiting for the preliminaries. That was why the Eve Festival existed. There, anyone could challenge anyone to warm up for the big day. But he also made it clear that they did not need weaklings delaying the event until sunset. Lee Jin found it amusing, until he heard someone call out to the umbrella guy. The man mocked him, saying he had talked too much earlier and should show his skills. Myung-ho replied that people had started picking on him because of the weapon. Some began whispering, asking if that really was an umbrella. He shot back, asking whether the Murim alliance had banned umbrellas as weapons, and if they knew who had given him that gift. He said that, in any case, he could entertain them. He introduced himself as Chul Myung-ho, saying he had swung a sword more than 100,000 times, and had recently learned slashes and thrusts from his master. The crowd laughed, saying that was child-level training. A spearman stepped forward, asking if that was the great master who taught techniques even street thugs knew. He said he did not want to get involved, but he would not let a weakling ruin the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Myung-ho replied that he did not care much about the tournament, but he would not refuse a fight. The two stepped onto the arena. Lee Jin watched from afar. Myung-ho rushed forward, saying that the one who strikes first wins. The spearman did not expect such speed, but the attack barely missed and struck the ground with force. Myung-ho had not realized that the new umbrella was shorter than the previous one. The spearman mocked him, saying he did not even know how to handle his own weapon. When he realized he was at a disadvantage, Myung-ho began to retreat. He thought he needed to create some distance for now. The duel turned into a game of cat and mouse, with him running in circles around the arena until he was knocked down. The spearman asked if he thought he could run forever in such a small space, and mocked the way he jumped around like a rat. He told him to get up. Myung-ho complained that first he was knocked down and then told to stand, asking what kind of joke that was. At that moment, he was struck in the chest by the butt of the spear. Even so, he grabbed the weapon and tried to counterattack at close range. The strike hit nothing, and he realized it was still too short. The spearman kept provoking him, saying he had recently learned horizontal cuts, and that was why he was so sloppy. He said he did not even want to see his thrusts, because they must be pathetic. Then he began to deliver multiple thrusts across Myung-ho's body, one after another, even covered in blood. He still took a kick to the face. He almost lost consciousness, but remained standing, because he knew Lee Jin was watching. He spat out blood. The spearman asked if he still did not understand the situation. He prepared a decisive thrust. At that moment, Myung-ho remembered Jung-hong's words, and wondered if he still regretted that miserable life. Yes, he did regret it, and precisely because of that, from now on he would live differently. He thanked the spearman and, suddenly, closed the distance between them. Chul Myung-ho's next strike came from above, and the black iron umbrella came down like a hammer, crushing the spearman's head and opening a huge crater in the center of the arena. The crowd was stunned, wondering what kind of heavy umbrella that was. Myung-ho realized his opponent was unconscious, and raised the umbrella toward Lee Jin. He wanted to say many things, wanted to thank him for being spared, for the training, wanted to promise he would repay everything because he was a venomous fox who never forgot favors. But in the end he only said that he had won, master, and asked if he had seen it. The people around began to murmur that he had really won using an umbrella. Myung-ho tried to curse at his opponent, but he could barely move. His whole body was battered. Even so, he asked if they were satisfied and said he was leaving, but several people started to step forward, saying that one victory was not enough. They lined up to attack him. He replied that there were only bastards there. He thought those idiots were all the same, but before he could even take a step, since his body was almost paralyzed, Lee Jin stood in front of him. At that very moment, everyone felt the crushing pressure of his power. The air grew heavy. Myung-ho asked why he had come. Lee Jin answered that he was just enjoying the pre-festival, nothing special. Myung-ho said that now they were in trouble, because his master would deal with it. Those who had stepped forward began to retreat like rabid dogs that suddenly sensed danger. Myung-ho's vision blurred and he started to lose his balance. Before he could fall, Hua, known as the autumn wind, caught him. He apologized to the knights present, saying it was getting late and that they could end things before the main event. He told Lee Jin that if he planned to win the tournament, it was not worth wasting strength there. The others took the chance to back off, saying it really was time to stop. Hua added that he was also staying there and suggested they have a drink together, as he had something he wanted to give him. Lee Jin accepted. Hua also remarked that the umbrella man had made quite an impression. Later, in Hua's room, the woman who had been with him days earlier said she had seen everything and asked why he had interrupted the confrontation. Hua explained that Lee Jin was a strong candidate for the championship. Since their family also wanted to win, it made no sense to expose all of his strength to the public ahead of time. He asked what she thought of Lee Jin. She replied that he seemed strong. Hua commented that, in a previous mobility competition, he had deliberately slowed down to match the pace of others, maintaining an exact distance. He was an experienced man. He had come to the tournament intending to defeat all the heirs of the great clans, but perhaps it would be better to withdraw that year. The woman asked if he was really that strong. Hua replied that even during the duel, Lee Jin had not used any internal energy at all. With pure physical strength alone, he could have crushed everyone there. Then he teased his sister, asking if she was interested in him, and suggesting that maybe it would be better to obey their father and get married soon, since being tied to the strongest merchant in the world would not be a bad thing. He asked if she had come out of curiosity, wanting to know what kind of man he was. She replied that no, she just wanted to measure his strength and told him to forget it. Hua told her to think carefully, because after he won the tournament, it might be too late. She answered that he was not her type. Then, as she turned around nervously, she ran straight into Lee Jin, who was standing at the door asking for permission to enter. She was so embarrassed that she slammed her head against the wall, even drawing blood. Hua explained that the one banging her head against the wall was his foolish little sister, one of the strongest candidates to win the next tournament. He said that, as one could see, she was not very feminine. She then introduced herself as Hua Yun-sul. Lee Jin also introduced himself formally. He thought that family was truly strange. Later, the three of them sat at a table drinking tea. Hua Yun-sul still wondered why she was there. Hua winked at her, signaling her to hand over the gift. Feeling awkward, she said she had found him impressive earlier and addressed him as Master Lee Jin. She asked why he had not accepted the gift before. He thought that he had done nothing to deserve it. She explained that it was a valuable handguard from their clan, not an offensive gauntlet, but a protective piece for the hands, and asked him to accept it as a gesture of goodwill. Lee Jin thought it seemed like a good item and considered accepting it. At that moment, Hua asked if he knew who the favorites to win the tournament were. Lee Jin replied that he had no idea. Hua commented that it was not good to be so uninformed. Hua asked Hua Eun-sul to explain the situation to Lee Jin, but she replied that her brother knew much more than she did, so he teased her, asking if Lee Jin would be interested in hearing about young Eun-sul's childhood, and she, irritated, said she would just explain everything at once. She said that many names were mentioned as possible winners of the tournament, but in the end, the real contest came down to two great powers, the Murim Alliance and the Association of the Rulers. On the Murim Alliance side, the strongest names were Jin Gale and Jir Young from the Wudang sect. Their participation was certain, but while the Manhwa sect was known for risking their lives in every duel, the Wudang sect hated getting involved in worldly affairs. On the side of the Association of the Rulers, the main candidates were Dokgo Han and Namgung Wi. She explained that if those two reached the finals, neither would come out unscathed, because besides being martial rivals, they were also rivals in love. Both were in love with Baekli Yen, known as the most beautiful girl in the south. If they clashed in front of her, they would do everything to humiliate each other and prove who was stronger, even if it meant being seriously injured. Upon hearing that name, Lee Jin became thoughtful. Could it be the daughter of the senior he owed so much to in his past life, Baekli Yen? That little girl had already grown up and become a woman admired admired by everyone. He used to be like an uncle to her, but now they were in the same generation. It felt strange. Yoonsul added that, besides that, her own brother was also part of the association of the rulers. He was an unpredictable variable because he had never fought in public duels. He had always found everything in life boring. Li Jin thought that was true, since he did not seem to have any desire to fight. Or perhaps he was so formidable that he simply did not need to show interest. Unicel continued, saying that there were still two other unpredictable variables that year. They were not widely known, but rumors said they were very powerful. One came from the Hainan sect, and the other was himself, Li Jin. He replied that he had heard enough. Hua asked how prepared he was. Li Jin put on the new handguard he had received as a gift, and said that, among all the competitors mentioned so far, he apologized, but did not consider any of them a threat. Hua replied that it was impressive, and concluded that he had no intention of losing. Even so, Hua thought that Li Jin was a difficult man to analyze. No matter how much he tried, he could not discern his martial art or his true level. He did not even know whether he had any interest in Unsul, who was known as the Snow Phoenix. He did not seem the least bit interested. In fact, Li Jin was more focused on the handguard, admiring the refined craftsmanship of the piece. Later, late at night, he took his leave. After he left, Yoonseol asked her brother what he would do about the tournament. He replied that he had finally found someone worthy, but that everyone was more concerned with winning than forming any kind of camaraderie. He said he would yield his position to young master Li Jin. She understood that, basically, he did not want to participate. She commented that he was very eloquent for saying it that way. He shot back, calling his sister shameless and asking if she did not find Li Jin a dull man, since he had not even tried to flirt with her. At least he did not seem like a scoundrel. She asked if he might be pretending to be uninterested, but her brother said he did not think so. He truly did not seem to care about her. Yoonsul replied that she did not care about him either. Hwa Yoonwol then advised his sister to feel and experience life freely. He said that throughout her life, she would see merchant heirs stronger than martial heirs, and clan heirs more despicable than bandits. Not every member of the Murim Alliance was a hero, and not every man of the underworld was dishonorable. She needed to see with her own eyes, hear people's words, and then choose the man she would love. That earlier conversation had only been teasing, nothing to take to heart. She said she understood, but he reminded her that that man had not even considered Namgung Wi and Doko Han as threats. At that moment, someone approached, asking who dared to say something like that. It was Doko Han himself, who had overheard the conversation. Hwa told his sister to go in first. As she passed, Doko Han gave her a long look. Hwa then told him not to worry, saying they were just the comments of a passing martial artist. Doko Han asked if a mere martial artist had dared to say that he and Namgung Wi did not matter. He questioned whether it was that merchant's son who had just left, the same one he had seen walking away. He asked if that man was Hwa and invited him to have some tea, mentioning that there were rumors his skills had grown recently. Doko Han asked who was stronger between the two of them, calling Hwa the future chief strategist. Hwa told him not to provoke him like that, and reminded him that he had been the one who defeated Ouyang Sang, so he should not underestimate someone just because he was a merchant's son. Suddenly, Doko Han drove his sheathed sword into the ground right beside Hwa's head, saying that his words were strange. He asked if he was implying that he was weaker than Sang, or even that brat. Hwa simply remarked that his temper never changed, and asked directly what he wanted there. Doko Han asked why he would not participate in the tournament. He said that if he defeated both him and the merchant's son, the association of the rulers would have a winner that year. Hwa just laughed and told him to go ahead and participate and relax. He said that this year neither the association of the rulers nor the Murim Alliance would produce the champion. It was a warning from the next chief strategist of the association. Doko Han asked if he could back up those words. He bet 10,000 neon that the winner would come from one of those two forces. Hwa asked if it was only 10,000 and raised it to 30,000, saying it would be neither of them. Doko Han turned away, saying he should prepare the money. The next morning, the preliminaries of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament began. Li Jin was one of the first to register. The official asked what name or nickname he wanted on his plaque. Li Jin asked if nicknames were allowed. The man replied that they were, since in the preliminaries it was not mandatory to use a real name. Li Jin thought that he could not use the title King of Fists. He had not yet surpassed his past self, and using that name would be disrespectful, so he asked them to write Fist Warrior. He took the plaque and went to the combat area, where several arenas had been set up. He observed the competitors. Many seemed strong. The internal energy of the young masters had indeed grown a lot in recent times, but he knew that internal energy was not everything, and he intended to prove it. He put on the handguards he had received as a gift, and decided he would test the body techniques he had refined. At that moment, he saw a competitor arguing with the judge, asking why his plaque was being broken. The judge replied that he lacked both the skill and the character for the main round, and told him to stop making a scene and leave. The man complained that he had won, so why was he being disqualified? The judge answered that this was the Murim Alliance, and that he had defeated his opponent in a cruel manner while he was already on the ground. That was not the conduct of a martial artist. He told them to call the medical team. Li Jin thought that judge had a strong temperament. Sometimes, the orthodox groups could be as irritating as certain arrogant clans. hands. Even so, because of elders like him, who still upheld their principles, he could not truly hate the orthodox side. He asked a staff member where the judge had gone, but the man said it did not matter. A spot had just opened due to the injured competitor, so he could step in immediately. When Li Jin entered the arena, he first paid his respects to the judge and handed over his plaque. The judge commented that he was a polite young man and asked if he was the fist warrior, wishing him good luck. He also noticed the handguards and said that he had been in Jianghu for 50 years and had never seen anything like them. Li Jin explained that he had received them as a gift from the young master of the Hua clan and that he did not know exactly the origin of the material either. The judge commented that they resembled threads of the celestial silkworm, difficult to cut even with sharp blades. It was a high-quality material. Li Jin thought that it might be more valuable than he had imagined. The red band opponent asked if they could begin. The judge said that if they were ready, they could. The man commented that judging by the handguards, he also fought with his fists and that it would be a good fight. But before he could finish speaking, Li Jin was already in front of him in the blink of an eye, saying that he thought he was already ready. The man replied that he was not, and took a punch that broke his nose and sent him flying out of the arena. The judge declared that the winner was the fist warrior, and thought that the young man had an extraordinary aura. It was a quick but intense fight. The next competitor was known as Life Thief. Li Jin bowed to him politely. The opponent thought that he was not an ordinary fighter, since he could not read his level. In situations like that, he usually used all his internal energy in a single decisive strike. He charged forward with force, using a wooden staff, but the staff was split in half by one of Li Jin's punches. He even received some advice. He should not concentrate all his energy on the staff, otherwise he would not have the strength to block the next attack. Soon after, he took a devastating punch. The people around began to wonder if he had just finished another fight with a single blow. The people from the association commented that it was not bad at all, and Doc Gohan said that the young man might only know body techniques, but his strength was not an unfounded rumor. The judge simply laughed and found it great, already calling the next participant. But the man in line gave up before even stepping in. The judge got irritated and said that he should not have signed up for the tournament with such weak determination, told him to leave the badge and go away, because many people there did not even master the basics. Then he took the badges and commented to Li Jin that he had never seen someone pass the preliminaries with only 2 punches in his entire life. He said that the kid was qualified and should prepare for the main round. Later, the tournament organizers and the important figures began to arrange the matches. They only needed to divide the participants according to their martial power, ensuring that the strongest would not face each other at the beginning. That same judge commented that, among everyone he had evaluated, the only clear favorite was the so-called fist warrior. People said that he had advanced straight to the first round with only 2 punches, so they decided to place a weaker opponent against him. It was at that moment that the alliance leader appeared. Jung Hong commented that there were not many qualified participants that year, and they replied that they had filtered out those with questionable character. He found it excellent and asked if Song Song had suffered any interference from non-orthodox factions. They said there had been no problems at all. Then Jung Hong announced that the Flying Dragon, Cloud Dragon, and White Dragon squads would track the positions of the qualified participants and support them, to prevent ambushes or unnecessary fights. He also ordered the elders that if anyone threatened a qualified participant, no matter if they were from a famous orthodox sect or clan, they should arrest that person immediately. For the honor of the Marine Alliance, no qualified participant could be harmed unjustly. After that, he slammed the door as he left. The others sighed in relief, commenting that he was always that intimidating. The next day, the main qualified participants of the Dragon Phoenix tournament gathered, and the bracket board was revealed before a large crowd. While preparing for the opening speech, Zhang Heng overheard Li Jin and Myungho talking. Myungho wanted to see everything up close and complained, asking if only the qualified participants were allowed to stay there. That made Zhang Heng remember an old conversation with a friend while he had been waiting for the arrival of the Martial Alliance leader. He thought that age was catching up to him and that old memories were returning. He remembered his friend and the day he died in the war. His friend had said that he should lead that battle. Then Zhang Heng began to wonder who had been the greatest sinner of the Orung campaign. Both he and the demonic faction carried guilt, since he had been the commander and many members had sacrificed themselves willingly. In Jianghu, the strongest had gathered to decide those matters, and perhaps that had been enough. Lost in those thoughts, he even imagined that this might be the last tournament he would hold. When he finally stepped out, he was cheered by everyone. He looked at the favorites for victory and began his speech, saying that 45 years ago, a young man with disheveled hair had gone there to borrow money to participate in the Orung tournament, and now he stood before them as the leader. Back then, winning 1 or 2 matches was already something remarkable, and sometimes someone would even die by bad luck. He remembered defeating a respectable martial master, then another from a renowned sect, and a man who had been among the best of that time. He said that man had started his life in the Murim Alliance alongside him, and that his name was Zhonghong, who received the Star Sword, while he himself received the Water Moon Sword. At that time, there were no official prizes for the winners, but the Alliance leader and the elders had voluntarily given those swords. After that, many things happened, and he admitted that he was never able to distance himself from the alliance again. The joy of receiving that sword made him develop the desire to become even stronger. Because of that, for the winner of this tournament, he had prepared a special gift, a 100-year-old Zhonghua ginseng from the Ma sect. When he announced it, everyone was shocked, because it was something that money could not buy. Zhonghong asked everyone to consider the true meaning of that, because it was something extremely rare. Even among the disciples of the Ma sect themselves, there were very few ginsengs like that, and yet he was offering it as a prize to an unknown winner. He remembered the past, the time of the Urong tournament, and the Urong campaign, when the most exceptional swordsman received a sword as recognition. In the present moment, Zhonghong explained that, for the best swordsman of this tournament, he could not give his own water moon sword, but the blacksmiths of the Gu clan had forged a new blade especially for the event. Those same blacksmiths had created unforgettable swords used by the greatest swordsman of the Manhwa sect. The winner would have the honor of personally naming that new sword. He then spoke to the passionate young people, saying that even after that disheveled-haired boy grew old and his hair turned white, the sword he held remained sharp. That was the water moon sword. No matter how many years passed, just as a blade must keep its edge, they too had to maintain a sharp and righteous heart throughout their lives, because after they ascended to the heavens, they would be the ones responsible for protecting that place. The 100-year ginseng, the star sword, and the sword forged by the Gu clan blacksmiths would be the rewards of the tournament, and that was not happening without reason. It was because they were orthodox. Then he officially declared that the Dragon Phoenix tournament was beginning. Myung-ho was impressed, thinking that the old man really seemed very strong. Meanwhile, Li Jin reflected on that phrase, because they are orthodox. He realized that it was not about pride, authority, or empty justice, but rather the declaration of an old man who had already lost much, and still chose to follow the orthodox path until death. Those who remained on that stage, burning their lives to uphold their convictions, were crazy, stubborn, and orthodox martial artists. Soon it was announced that the first match of the main bracket of the Dragon Phoenix tournament would begin. The participants would be the Fist Warrior and the two Spears of Hebei. When Li Jin stepped onto the arena, he was genuinely curious to see how strong the Orthodox alliance was. He analyzed his opponent and thought that it was the first time he had faced a martial master who used two spears. The spearman asked if he did not use weapons, meaning he was a fist practitioner. Li Jin almost replied that he was the king of fists right there at that moment. The spearman thought that there was a huge gap between fist practitioners and that. Since he had never heard of that guy, he must be weak. When the judge announced the start of the fight, the two charged at each other. Li Jin dodged the first spear strike, and the spearman realized that he moved and counterattacked like flowing water. Seeing that, he decided to create distance to take advantage of his spears and attacked with both at the same time. The impact was powerful, but Li Jin grabbed both spears with his bare hands and delivered a direct kick to the opponent's face. The spearman was thrown backward and ended up falling on top of Elder Song, who caught him and commented that it was too exciting. He said that he was not seriously injured, just unconscious. The victory was declared for the Fist Warrior. The audience was surprised and wondered if it was already over. Myung-ho was applauding enthusiastically, thinking that his master was truly too strong. When Li Jin stepped down from the arena, Myung-ho was the first to greet him. Hwa also congratulated him on the victory, and even greeted the man with the umbrella. Then Li Jin asked when Master Hwa would fight, but he replied that he would not participate. Doko Han of the Doko clan had provoked him, so he impulsively bet 30,000 yang on Li Jin's victory, trying to pretend it was not pressure. Myung-ho was shocked, saying that 30,000 yang was the price of 3 buildings. Li Jin replied that it had been a good bet and that he would make sure not to let him lose money. He also commented about the handguard he had received as a gift, saying that he heard from a senior that the item was rare and very well made. Hwa confirmed that the senior was correct, reinforcing that it was not an ordinary accessory. Some time ago, that sword had been given as a gift to the patriarch of the Bakeley clan. He liked the blade so much that in return, he handed over the handguard. Since the Bakeley clan had become a sword-focused clan generations ago, he felt that the handguard might find a better owner elsewhere. Li Jin thought that the patriarch must have been truly satisfied with the sword to make such an exchange. Thinking about it more carefully, he realized that the young lady Hwa also used a sword, while the young master Unwol carried a fan. That meant he probably mastered various types of weapons. Little by little, Li Jin began to feel that the Hwa clan was hiding a much greater strength than the world imagined. Then Unwol commented that the man he had made a bet with was stepping onto the arena. The one wielding that heavy sword was Doko Han, considered one of the strongest participants in the tournament. Everything suggested that the fight would end quickly. Myung-ho grumbled, asking why everyone there thought they were so strong. And in a very short time, Doko Han really did win his match. It was not faster than Li Jin, but it was still impressive. After his victory, Doko Han stared at Li Jin, Myung-go, and Unwol for a few moments and declared that a single strike had been enough and that there was no need to make a fuss about it. Then he provoked Unwol, asking if, even after that display, he still intended to keep the bet. He said that he would regret betting so much on the son of a merchant group, and even implied that the future supreme advisor of the association had terrible judgment. Myung-ho, irritated, head, asked who that guy thought he was, and even called him a worm-brained fool. Hearing that, Li Jin put his hand on his face, already imagining the trouble that was about to happen. Yunwol calmly asked if young Master Chul had really said that, and he replied that he was only speaking the truth, and asked if there was any problem with that. At that moment, Dokohan drew his sword and challenged him to repeat those words.